TV, Ottawa.
This is City News, CIWW 1310 AM Ottawa and CJET 1011 FM Smiths Falls and the Valley. City News time, 9 o'clock.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, April 20th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 1 degree, 2 degrees in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. As the price of gasoline hits the mid-180 range this morning, that is the sharpest indication of just how much more it is costing you. StatsCan out with its inflation rate for March this morning, climbing another percentage point more than it was in February, now 6.7% more in March compared to March of last year. As the Ukrainian port city of Mariupol continues to be pounded by Russian artillery, Ukrainian officials have said there may be a chance later today for a humanitarian corridor to open.
Deputy Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk said there was a preliminary agreement to allow women, children and the elderly to leave Mariupol from the west into Ukrainian-controlled territory. The southeastern city continues to be pounded by Russian bombs, which flattened a sprawling steel plant believed to be the defenders' last holdout. Russian military strikes also hit a hospital where hundreds were staying. Vereshchuk said civilians in Mariupol were facing a catastrophic humanitarian situation. I'm Karen Shamas.
City News time 9:01, and now your forecast with weather specialist Denise Andriachi.
It will be a sunny afternoon for Smiths Falls, partly cloudy in Ottawa. This evening, we're pretty clear overnight, partly cloudy, but we've got some rain on the way for Thursday, about 5 millimeters. We may see a few wet flurries as well, highs near 11. Sunny and near 12 for Friday, which is pretty seasonal for this time of year. So heading into the weekend with some good news and some nice weather. The daytime high today for Smiths Falls, 10 degrees.
And right now in Ottawa, 1 degree. In Smiths Falls, it's 2. The search continues for a missing 14-year-old girl last seen in the Orleans area, and that was a week ago Monday. Eva Marsh was seen around 2 in the afternoon, Monday, April 11th, in the Champlain Street and Jeanne d'Arc area. Her family and police are concerned for her well-being. Now, her picture and a full description is up for you. Just go to ottawa.citynews.ca. A new analysis out from Queen's University says spending money now to avoid the worst effects of climate change later will literally pay for itself.
Sean Cleary of Queen's Institute for Sustainable Development says the report is the first in Canada to look at the physical costs of climate change, including damage to infrastructure such as roads and buildings. He says the costs of even 2 degrees of warming will grow to more than $15 billion a year within 8 years. He says adapting Canada's buildings, transportation and power grid to avoid the worst impacts would cost at least $2 billion a year less. Cleary likens spending on climate change to a savings account that would bring long-term benefits. Karen Rebo, The Canadian Press.
City News time, 9:03. Apartment and condo residents who don't voluntarily use a green bin right now for their compostables may soon have to. The Committee on the Environment yesterday passing the motion that requires all multi-unit buildings to take part in organic waste, that is the green bin program. Now, there's no time frame just yet, but if it passes City Council next Wednesday, then City staff will put together a report. It will look into the cost of adding all those apartments and condos in Ottawa not currently taking part and when it could start. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Good, bad, or complicated.
There's no news in Ottawa and the Valley he won't talk about.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Remember when inflation was transitory? And the Bank of Canada kept saying that and saying that and saying that. Inflation's transitory. That means temporary. Transitory. Don't worry, it's just transitory. This morning, the inflation report comes out. Yeah, not so transitory. Not so. Widespread. Widespread is the word that jumps off the page from Statistics Canada, the latest inflation report. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. Very busy program ahead. A lot to cover. Let's start with this latest inflation report. I was just digging through it here. 6.7%. 6.7% inflation in Canada. My goodness. The consensus, you know what that means, what the economists were looking for, 6.1%, which would have been bad enough. So this is a surprise. It's a shock to the upside. And inflation, to quote Statistics Canada, may be pointing out the obvious. Inflation is widespread. It is widespread. There's no place to hide from higher prices. There are 8 major components to the Consumer Price Index, a.k.a. the inflation rate, a.k.a. the cost of living index, all 8 of them higher in the month of March. Every single one of them higher, 6.7% all told. And are our wages keeping up with that kind of inflation? No, they are not. No, of course they're not. In real dollar terms, most Canadians are taking a pay cut. I mean, if you're not signing a Brady Tkachuk-like contract, you are taking a pay cut, my friend. Wages, according to this inflation report, up 3.4% year over year. Inflation running at 6.7%. January of 1991. January of 1991. That was the last time inflation was running this hot. Number that month was 6.9%. January of 1991. I love doing this for some reason. I don't know why I love doing this, but I love doing this. Okay. Number 1 song, January of 1991. Justify My Love by Madonna. David has that on a mixtape in his car. We listened to it the other day together. And then we listened to the other number 1 song from January of 1991. And that was Love Will Never Do by Janet Jackson. Do you remember that song, David?
No.
Love Will Never Do?
No, I don't remember
Never
that.
Do Without You by Janet Jackson. Yeah. Number 1 at the box office. Okay, number 1 at the box office. David, all I have to do is this, and you'll know.
Home Alone?
Home Alone.
Home Alone.
Yeah, Home Alone.
Classic.
Yeah, 12th week. It had been the 12th week because it was January. Christmas was already over. Remember, it was a Christmas movie. Yeah, 1991, Home Alone. That was the last time inflation was running this hot. And I mean, who could afford to travel with these prices anyway? Certainly not Kevin. Gas prices up 12%. And up almost 40% year over year. Durable goods. That means in economics, a durable good is something built to be, well, durable. Economists define durable as something that should last you 3 years. You go and you buy something and you expect it to last at least 3 years, like a washing machine or a dishwasher or something like that. Prices for durable goods up almost 8%, the so-called big ticket items. Overall food prices 8.7% higher in March, year over year. Those dairy farmers and their supply management taking us to the cleaners. Ian Lee would say dairy products, eggs up 8.5%, butter 16% for butter increase, cheese up 10%, milk up 7.7%. My gosh, you want to go vegan. Breakfast cereal, I like Fruit Loops myself, up 12.3%. 12.3%. And food purchased from restaurants up 5.4%. Traveler accommodation, also known as hotel rooms, up 24%. Overall energy prices up 27%. And shelter, give me shelter, I can't afford to own my own, up 6.8%. Hey, where did you save money? I can't believe Stats can't even bother to point this out. Passenger vehicle registration in Ontario, a 100% decrease. Well, thank goodness for Doug Ford, inflation fighter. That's like the only saving grace from what is otherwise just a terrible inflation report from StatsCan this morning. So we're going to have expert reaction to this, especially on the price of food, the whole food supply system. I mean, gosh, if something can go wrong with the food supply chain, it seems it will. Avian flu is the latest concern, and we're going to have an expert on from the University of Guelph. Also on the show this morning, hey, every Wednesday morning we score our political fix. We'll do that right after the 9:30 news. Susan Smith, Tim Powers, right after the 9:30 news. It's going to be a lot of fun. So much to talk about at the Pierre Poilievre Traveling Roadshow, and it rolled in the Steam Whistle Brewery in Toronto yesterday, like the liberal heartland, and Poilievre packed the place. Downtown Toronto, Steam Whistle, I don't know. The Twitter mob went after Steam Whistle, threatened to boycott Steam Whistle. Everybody should boycott Steam Whistle Brewery for hosting a Pierre Poilievre event in Toronto. So Steam Whistle issued a statement that said, look, we just leased the space. It doesn't mean that we agree with his politics. In fact, they went out of their way to say they don't agree with his politics. So anyway, ridiculous. The whole thing is ridiculous. New polling out this morning because the big question with Poilievre, despite the crowd size at the rallies, is can Poilievre lead the Conservatives to the promised land? The promised land being a strong, stable majority Conservative government, in the words of Stephen Joseph Harper. Well, there's new polling out this morning on just that very question. It's from Ipsos. And Poilievre doesn't really score that well. Charest scores better than Poilievre. Charest doesn't do too bad in this poll, but Poilievre, not so. Conservatives really like Poilievre a lot more than they like anyone else in this race. That's obvious. The problem is nobody but conservatives really likes Poilievre. That's the problem. As well, with our commentators this morning, are we about to see the end of an era in Quebec politics? I'm 50 years old. And before the CAQ's big win in the last Quebec election, before Legault came along and swept Quebec, only two parties ever governed Quebec in my lifetime. Okay? The Liberals and the Parti Québécois. Now, in a recent by-election in Quebec, it was along a PQ stronghold, South Shore of Montreal. The winner was the CAQ candidate. The PQ candidate came second. The Liberals came in fifth. You know, you used to have this thing in Quebec, the separatists versus the federalists, and it meant the Parti Québécois and against the Liberals. The Liberals were anyone who wasn't a separatist. Now it looks like it's going to be the Nationalists by way of the CAQ, but not the Liberals. It's going to be the Conservatives, the Conservative Party of Quebec. Very interesting dynamics at work there. And on the Talkback Hour this morning, hey, happy 420, we're going to talk about pot. Legal pot in Canada more than 3 years later. More than 100 pot stores in Ottawa later. I have so many questions that I want to ask you, but starting with this big one. Was legalizing pot in Canada more than 3 years ago the right thing to do? We do the Talkback Hour every morning right after the 10 o'clock news. Your phone calls, your opinions at 750-1310. Only on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
My future future won't be burned. I show respect, I will connect. My future won't be turned. When I do this, do it for the youth. Indigenous, give it back to my roots. Do it for my kin, do it for the truth. With diligence when I'm back in the booth. When I move in, move for me too. Walk all together, we move as a group. No matter the weather, no matter the route. Birds of a feather, we say boom true. Oh, Gemma. Just let your spirit guide our future generations. Oh, Gemma. Just let your spirit guide our future generations. Come on. Oh, Gemma. Just let your spirit guide our future generations. Oh, Gemma. Just let your spirit guide our future. Fresh on the scene, follow a dream. Living like queen if you know what I mean. Don't want you to follow, I want you to lead. The youth of tomorrow, they're gonna see. Never live faded, keep my hair braided. Leading a nation with no separation. Know we can make it, know we can break it. Feel the vibration through all generations. Ripple effect, trickle the steps. Bridging the gap for civil context. We'll cripple the next, with little respect. Fixing the past, cause you know we all blessed. Opening doors, use education. Carry the torch with participation. Opening boards, use conversation. The future is yours, it's time that you take it. Oh, Gemma. Just let your spirit guide our future generations. Oh, Gemma. Just let your spirit guide our future generations. Come on. Oh, Gemma. Just let your spirit guide our future generations. Oh, Gemma. Just let your spirit guide our future generations. Revitalize traditions, let the youth bring it back. Revitalize traditions, let the future bring it back. Revitalize traditions, let the youth bring it back. Revitalize traditions, let the future bring it back. Just let your spirit guide our future generations. Oh, Gemma. Just let your spirit guide our future generations. Oh, Gemma. Just let your spirit guide our future generations.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News. 101.1 FM.
and 1310 a.m.
There is a meeting of the Transit Commission today, and the chair of the Transit Commission is Ottawa City Councillor Alan Hubley from Canada, and he joins me this morning here on City News. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
So look, as the year goes on, one of the big issues, especially for downtown councillors, more progressive, what they would call themselves, more progressive councillors, one of their big things is free transit, quote unquote, free transit. What would it take to bring in free transit? I know you call it no charge transit, but what would be involved in something?
It's not free, Rob. Nothing's ever free. We've learned that over the years. So someone has to pay. So the notion of no charge at the fare box, there's a couple of ways of getting there. And that's what we've asked our staff to go through the process of doing the long-range financial plan for transit so that we can figure out how much money we need to be able to raise to keep the system going and growing. And then we've also asked them to scope out what it would look like to get to the bottom of no charge transit. To give us, and I listed a whole bunch of things that I wanted them to consider. Because let's be fair to those that are promoting no charge transit, there will be some savings there too, some offsets. There'll be some growth in ridership for sure. So let's capture the savings as well as the costs so that we have an actual picture for voters this fall to look at, because we know there's going to be a lot of candidates that are running on free transit, all kinds of items that are going to cost the taxpayers. So I think it's fair, and I hope you would agree, that we put dollar values to these things so that people know what they're voting for.
Okay. Have you decided that you're running in the next election?
I have, Rob. Thank you for asking. Yes, I'm definitely running in the next election for Canada South, and so thank you for asking.
But you're not running on free transit?
I'm not running on free transit. No. Look, I'm a fiscal conservative. I have been since the very start of this. I think my residents know me that way. I believe money needs to be spent on infrastructure and things that benefit the taxpayer instead of other things. So I will not be running on free transit. Now, let me say this, please. Yep. I mentioned there's a couple ways to get there. The other way was a motion that Councillor McKenney put forward that I actually second, because this is one way that I could see they could achieve that. The federal government, our Prime Minister, has talked about transferring $55 billion to cover transit operational costs, which in our case, if our share of that is, equivalent to several $100 million, well, then we could provide free transit. No charge transit. Free because the taxpayer's paying for it. Right. Because there's only one taxpayer, but the federal pot of tax dollars is so much bigger than the municipal one. $1 billion is a quarter of our budget. $1 billion is what the feds spend in less than a day.
Okay, let's talk about the comments from the president of the Treasury Board, Mona Fortier, about the federal public servants. The hybrid work is here to stay. Hybrid work is here to stay. What is it going to mean, even if it's a hybrid work model, let alone drastically reduced number of public servants taking public transit into work in the morning and then home again in the afternoon? Whether that's to the downtown core or any of the federal government campuses all throughout the city. You used to work for the federal government. I remember. If I remember, you worked off of River Road, I think, at one time, right? So
a long time ago.
Long time ago. But what's that going to mean for public transit usage in the city?
It's going to mean that it has to change. It has to evolve. And so what's that going to, because we're no longer going to need as many buses to bring people from the suburbs into the core, because they won't be working in the core anymore. And that's what the current model is really based on, because the majority of our riders are public servants and students. And both groups are really leaning towards the work from home or study from home model, which is fine. I'm not judging that at all. I just need clear direction from the minister that what's the numbers going to look like, because we don't want to take 50% of our buses off of those routes and then have crowded buses and people saying you cut too far. We really need the numbers so that we can make those decisions. And what I personally would be promoting that we look at doing is moving some of those buses we no longer need to move public servants, put them in the communities like Canada, Stittsville, Barrhaven, Orleans, and move people around within the community. And I'll tell you where I'm going with that. In Canada, we know the majority of the residents either live in Canada South or Stittsville, and a lot of them work in Canada North. It used to be you had to take a bus from, say, Bridlewood into Bayshore to get back to Canada North to go to work. Now, one of the things we were able to do this term is start a route that goes around Canada Stittsville so that they would be able to jump on that bus and get to Canada North. We need to do more of that. Barrhaven has similar needs like that too, and so does Orleans.
Okay, all right. Let's talk about a few more things. Boy, the price of gas is a killer. So with the city uses, according to the city's own literature, and I read this stuff, Councillor.
I know you do.
Okay. 50 million liters of diesel fuel a year. Okay. Diesel fuel that the city, the city hedges because it buys it in bulk, right, for OC Transpo and the police and whatever.
Right.
But, the last contract was for $1. Well, now $1 a liter. Well, now it's It's $2 a liter.
Yes.
Don't hear much from the city council about what this is going to mean. Maybe somebody should ask the treasurer about that. What do you think?
Well, that's what we've done. Like, by asking for the long-range financial plan for transit, I shouldn't say we've done it for everything across the city, but we certainly have done it for transit. We've asked the treasurer to look at the long-range financial plan, and what that is that's going to capture those costs, such as, because, yes, maybe we hedged against it and we're not paying $2 a liter right now, but that contract renews, and we'll probably pay $2 or more on that hedge. If this year is any indicator, I don't think $2 a liter is the ceiling.
Okay. All right. Phase 2. I was actually out in the West End not that long ago. Phase 2 ends at Moody of light rail, right?
Yes.
That's the last stop. It seems to end at a weird place, Councillor. Like, it doesn't.
Well, if you recall, the original Phase 2 plan was to end at Bayshore. And what we quickly realized there was that wasn't going to help anybody in Canada or Barrhaven for it to be.
But it doesn't look to me like it really gets into Canada. Not what most people would know as Canada, anyway.
No, it gets to Moody Drive, which is, I think at one point I referred to it as the doorstep of Canada, because Canada's at the top of the hill and Moody's at the bottom. But what it does, Rob, is it makes it very possible for us to have bus routes in Canada that will go to Moody Drive and do that circular hub, moving people to Moody, instead of now you get on a bus in Canada and have to go all the way down.
Is there going to be a
Tunney.
park and ride there?
There won't be a park and ride. What we'll use is the Eagleson and Terry Fox park and ride.
So I would have. So hold on. So look, if I'm coming, let's say I'm coming from west of the Canadian Tire Centre, and I want to use Ottawa's light rail system. I would drive my car if I could get a parking spot at that park and ride at Eagleson, then get on a bus and go to Moody, and then get on the light rail. Is that the plan? That's the plan?
This is the plan today. You go to Tunney's. What having the station moved to Moody's going to do for us is it's a much shorter distance. And when you're saying coming west from Ottawa, so if you're saying Carp, there's a park and ride out in Carp.
Okay.
You would get the nearest park and ride. You wouldn't necessarily go to the Eagleson park and ride. But for many Canada people, the current plan is that they would get to the Eagleson park and ride and then switch over to something that gets them to Moody.
Yeah.
What I mentioned to you earlier is I'd like to see more buses within the community that would then loop right down to Moody, so you wouldn't be going anywhere near the park and ride, and we could pick you up closer to your home.
Okay, gotcha. All right. It just seems to end at a weird spot. I only notice this because the building is actually starting to take shape now. So
it is, and I'm not disputing that with you, Rob, but it's a better place than if it had ended at Bayshore, because can you imagine trying to get that volume of buses in and out of Bayshore?
Do you happen to know, we're just a little tight on time. Sorry to keep jumping ahead here. What was the last estimate for Phase 3? I know the city wasn't interested in funding Phase 3. It's only going to get done if upper levels of government foot the whole bill, but was it $5 billion? Something like that?
No. Well, we don't have numbers yet for Barrhaven, but to get up to Canada, it was under $1 billion. Because really all we have to do is run the tracks up the hill, and at that point we had considered Terry Fox to be the end station for the start of the run to Canada. Eventually it's got to cross and go to Canadian Tire Place and then up to Hazeldean. But just to get it up to the hill to Terry Fox Station, and then all the buses would go right to Terry Fox, which is a transit spot now. Right. It would be under $1 billion. And I'm sorry, I don't have the actual dollars yet for the cost to get out to Barrhaven.
Okay.
Now, the city said that they wanted to put Canada and Barrhaven together as Phase 3, but Canada's ready to go right now. Barrhaven, we're still doing the finalizing of the work on it, the EA and the estimates.
Okay. Look, always nice to talk to you ahead of the Transit Commission meeting. You're always so generous with your time. Thanks again, Councillor.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah.
Bye now.
Bye. Yeah.
The Rob Snow Show, brought to you by Meyer.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, April 20th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 1 degree. In Smiths Falls, 2. Here's what's making news this hour. StatsCan says the annual rate of inflation hit 6.7% in March. It is the fastest year-over-year increase in the Consumer Price Index since January of 1991. The increase compared to a gain 1% lower, 5.7% back in February. Fueling this increase for the most part, gasoline. It rose 39.8% compared with the same month 1 year ago. Russia has presented Ukraine with a draft document. It outlines its demand as part of a peace talk and waiting for a reply now. But while Moscow waits for that, Russian forces are battling that stubborn pocket of resistance in Mariupol. Apartment and condo residents in the city who don't voluntarily use a green bin for their compostables may have to do that soon. Committee of the Environment passing the motion, sending it to City Council next Wednesday. If passed there, staff will determine how much it will cost and the time frame for implementation. City News Time, 9:33. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
It's time to score your political fix. Joining us, Susan Smith, Principal, Blue Sky Strategy Group. Susan, good morning.
Good morning to you, sir.
Hey, welcome back. You well these days?
Yeah,
you're good. Yeah,
dregs
you're
of COVID.
What's that?
The dregs of COVID.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You had the COVID?
I had the COVID.
I don't know why. I don't know why we call it the COVID. It's like such a that's a Newfoundland thing or something.
No, we call it the vid for Christ.
The vid.
Not the COVID.
The vid. Okay.
The vid.
And that's
that
Tim Powers.
A lot more nefarious, Tim.
The vid. Yeah. That doesn't. That. Let's just move along. Let's just move along. Yeah, Tim Powers, Chair Summa Strategies. Okay, so look, we just heard our bottom hour newscast. Our top story is the inflation rate, 6.7%, surprising even the economists of Bay Street, but not surprising the frontrunner in the Conservative leadership race, who is already all ready to pounce all over the Twitter sphere with a brand new video about, you guessed it, just inflation. Here's Pierre Poilievre, a new video released just moments ago.
Topping today's news, the Trudeau government's debt passes $1 trillion, and all that money is bidding up prices as more dollars chase fewer goods. Inflation hits a 30-year high, while housing inflation has more adults living with parents, and tax hikes hit wages and gas. Trudeau was asked if it's just inflation.
Increased prices on everything, difficulty buying gas, difficulty buying computer. They've shrugged and said, oh, it's just inflation, it's just inflation, just inflation, just inflation, just inflation.
Oh, it's pretty good. Okay. All right, very well timed, too, to coincide with the release of the Consumer Price Index this morning. Comes along with the website here, Pierre for PM, pierreforpm.ca. pierreforpm.ca. It's hashtag just inflation. Help me restore the buying power of our money, says Pierre Poilievre. It's been out for what here? 8:32. It's 9:35. It's been out for an hour and has 8,000 views on Twitter already. Wow, incredible. All right, how's everybody? Let's get into it. Conservative Party leadership race. The Pierre Poilievre Roadshow travels to Toronto. Pack them again in the lefty heartland of downtown Toronto, Susan. What, if anything, do you take away from last night's crowd in Toronto?
Well, I'll give Pierre Poilievre credit for one thing, and maybe one thing only, and that's his ability to organize. He's been in leadership organization mode since Aaron O'Toole won the leadership. And so he's got his buses at the ready, his people at the ready, and he gets them trucked in. And good for him. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to build some momentum, and I think it's working to a certain extent. I think what he'll have to be careful about is the polling that we continue to see is that he's appealing to a certain tranche of the Conservative Party, but he's also dividing the Conservative Party. And if he's dividing the Conservative Party, how badly will he divide the country? And that's something that Conservatives need to take into account. Poilievre knows how to organize. He's been working on it for 2 years. He was never a loyal soldier of Aaron O'Toole. And so this is what you're seeing in these early days with these numbers at the rallies.
Okay. What do you take away from a crowd like that in Toronto last night, like downtown Toronto?
Look, it's impressive. That is, as you said, not conservative heartland. I'd agree with Susan. Poilievre, at least through what we see, and I keep making this point, is demonstrating to us, because he feeds us all of this information, and to other candidates that he's serious, he's organized, he's delivering at least people for the important showpiece momentum elements of a campaign. So that would suggest he is strong. His purpose obviously is to try and scare off others or to attract people to the parties, to his campaign. So good for him on that. I continue, as I say, Rob, to be interested in what Patrick Brown is doing, and there's more coming out, it seems, on all of that, and how the polling data that you referenced, or Susan referenced, that Ipsos and others have validated, creates an opportunity maybe for Mr. Charest, who many would suggest hasn't caught fire yet, but maybe he's doing better than we know. I mean, that polling data so far is not surprising, and the Poilievre campaign seems to have made the calculation that let's win the leadership race first, and then we'll deal with, if we do win the leadership race, connecting with other Canadians after, and that's not an unusual formula, one that either works or doesn't, to be determined.
Yeah. So, sure, Sue, go ahead. Yep.
Well, I was going to say, he hasn't had any tough tests yet, right? Pierre Poilievre is walking into rooms that he's organized. So he hasn't been on a debate stage where, the bombast that he's bringing to the one-sided bombast and the challenges to the truth that he's bringing to some of these rallies have not been tested in a forum with his other leadership contenders. So I look forward to the debates that are coming up with the Jean Charest and the Patrick Browns and the Leslie Lewises of the world, and that moderate gentleman whose name I can't remember, the mayor from the MP who's the mayor from
Aitchison?
Huntridge. No, the other one up there. Look, Poilievre is...
What's his name?
I know, poor guy, right? Yeah, I'm sure he's a very nice man. And a moderate, right? And this is where Poilievre is going to get himself into, this is where the trouble's going to happen. It's been easy street so far for him.
Yeah.
But when somebody, you played his inflation commercial at the front end, he's blaming it all on Trudeau, pretending that there have been no lockdowns in China, where many of the people live and work, who make the things that we need in our supply chains that we buy. He pretends there's been no pandemic, which resulted in government programs that Conservatives benefited from as well, people voting for Pierre Poilievre. These things are going to be challenged, and this is when we'll see how well he can dance and how well the bluster really pans out.
Okay.
Rob, I know it's your show, but can I add?
Go right ahead. Yeah.
No, it's just on other data. This is from our Abacus poll of last week that Coletto put out. And you remember David looked at that first video Pierre put out about being PM. Two pieces that I found really interesting and that I think have relevance to the broader race and also the competition of Pierre, both liberal and internally. One, Pierre Poilievre is not seen across the country as the way you and Susan and I and others may see him in Ottawa. So he is a bit of a, strangely, for his perception that he has created here in Ottawa, and the one that is very polarizing, that hasn't been picked up in polling data yet. In fact, he is connecting with younger voters, and they've been promoting that, as you know, in the Poilievre campaign so far. And that's different for a Conservative candidate. So he does have opportunity. We shouldn't dismiss that we're seeing in that data and the Ipsos data, that while we may know Pierre and while we may have defined visions and views of Pierre, to the broader public right now, he doesn't have those same ironclad sketches that we have had.
Well,
of
Tim,
him over the last number of years.
Didn't Jerry Butts say something along the same lines recently, that Poilievre is connecting with the same kind of voters, younger voters, that put Trudeau in office in 2015? And this time around, maybe some of the issues are different. It's locked out of the housing market, locked out of career-paying jobs, locked out of the middle class, locked out, and that's who he's connecting with, and that's what has people like Jerry Butts on the Liberal side saying, don't discount the very idea that this person won't connect with voters. So
that's what our data showed.
That's what your data showed. Okay,
at least so far.
I want to talk about two things that I think he has to answer for eventually. And Susan is right that this is, I think, going to come up in the debates, when the debates start for the leadership candidates. One is Bill 21, and the other is $10 a day child care. And I'm wondering, Susan, how he's going to handle these issues. On Bill 21, is he going to go to this default position and say, well, that's just a Quebec issue? Because that's not where Patrick Brown is. It's not where Jean Charest is, even though they know that's unpopular in Quebec. I know with Patrick Brown, he thinks it's going to pay dividends in other ridings. And on $10 a day child care, is he going to be the only Conservative leader in the country opposed to child care agreements? Is he going to be? Is he going to be? Is he going to be on the other side of Jason Kenney, Scott Moe, Doug Ford, and 3 or 4 others? That's kind of an odd position for him to be in.
Well, it's going to be a very difficult one. In particular, that one. I think they're both difficult positions, but certainly on childcare. By the time he's up, if he decides he's going to campaign against it, he'll have to take it away from people.
Yeah.
And that is going to be, because it's going to be in place. And
it'll be in place, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be in place. And
people are already going to get
from it. And
savings this year, right? So
and families benefit directly from that, right? And that is one of the measures that the feds and the provinces together, regardless of the strike, have put in place that's made a difference for families and enabled more families to have more money in their pockets and to counter some of the inflationary challenges that are out there. So Poilievre will have a real dance if he wants to take that away, especially if he's trying to appeal to young people. If he's appealing to people in their 30s and their 40s, they're people with children in childcare. On Bill 21, I hope he gets boxed deep into a corner and pummeled on the issue. I think all leaders should take a very clear stance against Bill 21. And the fact that Charest and Brown have and will do that will show us what kind of leader Pierre Poilievre might be on these issues and how he wants to get away with that. And that'll have an impact on how certain groups of the Conservative Party and certain groups may or may not vote for him, and then certain groups of the Canadian public may or may not vote for him.
What do you think on these two issues? I mean, he wants to focus really on the economic issues, and Bill 21, $10 a day childcare, they never come up, right? So how do you think he's going to handle those, Tim?
I think he can waffle his way out of 21, as others have. Trudeau has, Singh has. I mean, there's no real federal leader, to be honest, who has done a great job of standing strong against Bill 21. They've all been kind of weak on it, so I don't think that's going to be a defining issue. And he knows he doesn't have the Quebec caucus at the moment. I think he may take the lead on from Eric Duhaime, who's the Conservative Party candidate leader in Quebec. I would argue, my God, I've evolved over 15, 16 years. You know, childcare is an economic issue. He can't take the Harper position of 2005, 2006.
And nobody is now. And nobody is.
Yeah, I know. And as Susan rightly points out, then you could, because the promise had never been delivered upon. And you didn't have Conservative premiers who were signing agreements, and you mentioned some of them, and Doug Ford being a key one as well, with the Prime Minister on them. You can't take that away now. It is so central to our economic well-being in this country. That will cause major political headaches for Pierre and for Conservatives if they were to try and undo what many of their Conservative brethren now strongly support.
Yep. Okay, when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the Poilievre campaign and who he is attacking and who he's not attacking, namely Leslyn Lewis, not going after social conservative issues at all. And we'll talk, Tim mentioned what's happening in Quebec. Let's talk a little bit about what is going on in Quebec politics. I don't think any of us would profess to be an expert, but this is something that quite likely is not happening in our lives, what's going on in Quebec right now. This is The Rob Snow Show. It's your political fix on City News.
Slept down in the valley where the Saskatchewan flows, and I've got my feet full of Alberta rose, Alberta rose, Alberta rose. Prickles in your feet makes you feel like going home. To the city, I had myself a seat down in the park with a beer and it's cheap. I bought drinks for the girls, but you know how it goes. Got myself pretty by an Alberta rose, Alberta rose, Alberta rose. Prickles in your feet makes you feel like going home. Alberta rose, Alberta rose. Prickles in your feet makes you feel like going home. Slept down in the valley where the Saskatchewan flows, and I got my feet full of Alberta rose, Alberta rose, Alberta rose. Prickles in your feet makes you feel like going home. Alberta rose, Alberta rose. Prickles in your feet makes you feel like going home.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Part 2, your political fix. Susan Smith and Tim Powers, our guests. Pierre Poilievre, his campaign is not afraid to go after Brown. Brown's a liar. Chare's a liberal. You know all of this stuff. He never attacks Leslyn Lewis. He never attacks Leslyn Lewis, despite the success Leslyn Lewis had in the last Conservative Party leadership. And other than a reference to religious freedom, did you hear me? I say freedom. Poilievre doesn't mention SOCON issues, social conservative issues, really at all. What's the strategy there, Tim? What's going on there, do you think?
He just wants you to scream freedom like Mel Gibson. Freedom. And you are Mel Gibson to me, Rob. That is crazy.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
Well, the strategy is you don't want to. Lewis is.
I'm the Mel Gibson from The Smoking Gun. That's what you. That Mel Gibson, right?
Yeah, all right. And I'm your Danny Glover from
Lethal Weapon.
The other one. Lethal Weapon. Anyway, we've gone way off track. Well, let's use Lethal Weapon. Leslyn Lewis has demonstrated that she's very lethal at delivering votes, and he doesn't want to agitate her. Nobody, I believe, has offered a critique of the top three of Dr. Lewis. In fact, they've all been very positive and strong about her, as they should, for a whole bunch of reasons. So the last candidate who will get attacked probably is Leslyn Lewis, because she has demonstrated she can deliver votes, that she's a good organizer, and I think she represents an important part of the Conservative future. And there is something unseemly about three white male candidates, or any white male candidate attacking a biracial candidate for the female candidate for the Conservative Party.
I think it's all about down ballot support. This is a ranked ballot.
Yep.
So you go in and you write your first choice and you write your second choice. And if your first choice doesn't win, they go to the second choice. So Poilievre, by not going after the SOCON at the moment, is hoping that they will make him their second choice if Leslyn Lewis does not triumph on the first round, on the first ballot, which she is unlikely to do. That is 100% what it's about. Poilievre will pander wherever he needs to pander to get whatever votes he wants and needs, so he can ignore it. As I said, he's existing in a bubble right now, a Pierre Poilievre created bubble, where he goes into a room, he's given the mic, he doesn't get asked any hard questions. If he gets asked any questions at all, we'll see if he adopts the Stephen Harper approach of 5 questions, that's it, all screened. But we'll see what happens when it comes to the debate. And he gets asked, hopefully, some reasonable questions that should be put to any potential leader of the party about choice and about other women's choice and about other issues that impact ordinary Canadians, and where can social conservatives stand in a different perspective than much of the rest of the country. So Poilievre is all about protecting his votes for the leadership. We'll see what happens when he gets asked again the hard questions. I still don't think he will go after Leslyn Lewis. I think you're right, Tim, but there's nothing magnanimous about it.
All right, we have 4 minutes left here. Okay. Are we watching the end of an era in Quebec politics? I turned 50 last year. We're all around the same age. But during my entire lifetime, up until the most recent CAQ victory in the province of Quebec, only 2 parties ever governed Quebec. We had the Liberals and the Parti Québécois. There was just a PQ loss in a by-election that in Montreal that the PQ has held there for most of that riding's existence. PQ came second, the CAQ came first, the Liberals finished 5th. The Conservative Party in Quebec, as you mentioned, Tim, under Duhaime, is an ascendant force. The CAQ is the dominant force now. What's happening in that province, do you think, right now? Not that we're experts or anything, but it's really interesting, isn't it, what's going on there?
Well, there's some things that are common. I think, there's always been, so Eric Duhaime and the Conservative Party of Quebec are apparently achieving prominence in and around the Quebec City area and around the broader area of Lévis and the like. That has, under different names, been both federally and provincially had more of a conservative base than not, for different reasons. Susan may know better than I why that is the case, but that has been the case. I think Quebec has always demonstrated also that it likes disruption maybe more than others. For a long time, the Bloc Québécois went from a disruptive party to an establishment party, died and come back as a disruptor. I think Quebecers are very much more likely than other Canadians to react more quickly when they don't get what they want, or they want to create conditions to get what they want. That may sound simplistic, but that seems to be the case there, and we're seeing it play out now. How it ends with the election, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, you do. You know what's going to happen there. Legault in a landslide. So what's going to happen? Susan, what do you think is going on there? It's interesting to me.
I think Ken was alluding to it. Quebecers are pragmatists, right? And they, you go back to the days of Maurice Duplessis and the Union Nationale. Nobody hears about them anymore. So yeah, right. I think parties have come and gone in Quebec history because Quebecers are pragmatists. The decline of the PQ and the rise of the CAQ has a couple things in common. One, I think separatism at the moment is dead. It lives in the hearts of some people, but that is not something that dominates the hearts and minds of most Quebecers when they get up in the morning. Mm-hmm. And François Legault captured that and said,
but the defense of the language and the defense of the culture is far from dead. I mean, that's alive and well.
And he's a nationalist, so he absolutely will defend those things. But he has said, I will not have a referendum while I'm the leader. He's also, he's a pragmatist from an economic perspective. The other thing he benefited from was a fatigue with the Liberals. I mean, under Charest and under Couillard, there had been a long time of Liberal governments in Quebec, and they wanted to change the channel and change the page. He's also a very charismatic leader, and I think he will benefit again at the moment from the pandemic. It's been his face front and center, and it's very difficult for other leaders to go through. As we've seen even on the federal scene, Aaron is case in point on that. So people will vote, I think, for François Legault until they're tired of him, and which I guess is what happens in politics. But they feel, he's either mishandled the pandemic, but he's gotten them through it. He's not fighting a separatist war that they don't want. He's focused on the economy, and I think that's where the pragmatism comes through.
Okay. Great to hear from both of you. Thanks for joining me. Get well soon,
having us.
Susan. Okay.
I look forward to your next movie, Mel. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, thank you. That's your political fix. Tim Powers from Summa Strategies, Susan Smith from Blue Sky. Talk Back Hour. Coming up next, 3+ years since marijuana became legal in Canada. Is that the right thing to do for the country? What do you think? This is 420, and this is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Hey, I'm Ash Ravens. I'm a singer-songwriter in Ottawa, Canada. I'm performing on Encore Ottawa 3. It's been great, especially for me, who's a completely newcomer to the Ottawa music industry and music scene. I've been welcomed with open arms. I'm a member of OMIC, and I'm loving it so far. This kind of concert series promotes music and gives us newcomers or even like new bands a big chance to showcase their talents and share their music with the world. So yeah, it's a great opportunity for me to perform at the beautiful Shenkman Arts Center. I'm supported by Rogers TV, obviously, and I've been checking out the previous Encore 1 and 2 videos on Rogers channel, 22 channel, as well as YouTube. and I've been blown away. Frankly, it's so beautiful. It's world class, to be honest. And the lighting and the sound, everything was mind blowing for me. And so I'm really glad that I'm here, enjoying this very moment, talking to you guys. Going to be performing on stage for Rogers TV and for OMIC. Yeah, it's a big opportunity for me.
Is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News. Now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, April 20th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 1 degree, 2 degrees in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The general manager at OC Transpo has updated Transit Commission this morning on the issue of wearing a mask. Renee Amilcar says they will continue with the mask-wearing policy for all bus riders and drivers for the foreseeable future. Amilcar says it doesn't matter what the province decides, OC Transpo will keep the mask mandate under its current bylaw. As Transit Commission is settling in, discussing the long-term financial planning for OC Transpo, the chair once again calling for more information on a return-to-work plan from the federal government. Here's City News reporter Chris Curries.
Hybrid work is here to stay for the feds, but what does that mean for OC Transpo? For example, buses from the burbs to the core would be reconfigured. But how many and how often is something that Alan Hubley doesn't know yet. And to know that, he's calling once again for more details from the federal government.
I just need clear direction from the minister that what's the numbers going to look like, because we don't want to take 50% of our buses off of those routes and then have crowded buses and people saying you cut too far. We really need the numbers so that we can make those decisions.
Hubley tells City News most of the riders are civil servants and students who are also leaning on a work-from-home model. Chris Curries, City News.
City News time 10:02, and now your forecast with weather specialist Denise Andriachi.
It will be a sunny afternoon for Smiths Falls, partly cloudy in Ottawa. This evening, we're pretty clear overnight, partly cloudy, but we've got some rain on the way for Thursday, about 5 millimeters. We may see a few wet flurries as well, highs near 11. Sunny and near 12 for Friday, which is pretty seasonal for this time of year. So heading into the weekend with some good news and some nice weather. The daytime high today for Smiths Falls, 10 degrees.
And right now it's 1 degree in Ottawa, 2 degrees in Smiths Falls. Ottawa police are asking anyone who has information about a shooting on Jean Mance Street to come forward. It was yesterday morning around 6. Officers were called to that area of Vanier after a report someone had been shot. Now, the victim was treated by paramedics for what they described as non-life-threatening injuries and taken to hospital, where he is now in stable condition. Anyone who witnessed the shooting or who has dash cam or security footage of that area once again around 6 yesterday morning asked to contact the Ottawa Police Guns and Gangs Unit. The cost of living in our region went up well above the national rate last month. In Ottawa, the rate in March was 7.5%, compared to 6.7% nationally. With the rest of the national picture, here's Dawn Kelly.
Statistics Canada says that's the fastest year-over-year increase in the Consumer Price Index since January 1991. And you don't have to look much further than prices at the pumps to see what's fueling inflation. Gasoline prices shot up 39.8% from last March. Homeowner replacement costs, which includes prices for new homes, rose 12.9% year over year. Dawn Kelly, The Canadian Press.
City News time 10:04. The United Nations Refugee Agency has announced another grim milestone in this Russian war on Ukraine. It says now more than 5 million refugees have fled Ukraine since Russian troops invaded on February 24th. The conflict has spawned Europe's biggest refugee crisis since the Second World War. Countries taking in refugees are providing various forms of support, but still need international help. And the announcement scheduled for this morning around combating hate in the province has been cancelled. The Minister of Culture, Rec and Sport in the province, Lisa MacLeod, had a briefing scheduled for 11 this morning with the Provincial Minister of Multiculturalism. But that has been cancelled, according to a release from MacLeod's office, for circumstances outside their control. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
It's 4:20. Well, I mean, it's 10:05, but it's 4:20. It's April 20th. Pot Day. Marijuana Day. It has been more than 3 years since the Trudeau government legalized pot in Canada, and I just want to do a rapid poll for the hour here and kind of get your thoughts 3+ years into this experiment, because we had never been down this road before. Very few countries have traveled down this road before, and 3.5 years later or so, here we are. And I want to ask you this question on this 420: was legalizing pot the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do? Okay. Good or bad? Rapid poll, yes or no. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. And then we'll get the conversation kind of going from there. I'd love to hear from you this morning, okay? I have a bunch of other questions that I could ask you. One of them that I'd be curious to know what you think. Are there too many pot stores in Ottawa? My goodness gracious, there seem to be a lot of pot stores in Ottawa. The news reports suggest that there are more than 100 pot stores in Ottawa now. 108 pot stores. And more are coming. I see it all the time. But are there too many pot stores? Or do you say, look, these are all private businesses. It's kind of, it's even though it's 3 years, it's kind of early days, and there's probably going to be a market consolidation at some point. The market will sort it out. As well, I want to ask you this. Do you think smoking marijuana is socially acceptable now, 3 years after legalization? Is it, for example, as socially acceptable as beer or wine or spirits? Would you bring pot to a dinner party? What would you think if someone brought pot to your dinner party? Give that some thought. 750-1310. The government as well. The government promised to waive fees and speed up the process for pardons for people who were convicted of simple possession of pot back when pot was illegal. But do those people deserve a pardon? Because it was illegal. All right, it did break the law. And this one, if you used pot before it was legal and you got it from a guy, a guy knows a guy, If you used to get it from a guy, do you still get it from the guy? Or do you go to the legal store now? Because that was the point all along, right? Of legalization, to put the guy out of business. Is the guy out of business now? Your guy? Is your guy out of business now? And instead you go to one of the storefronts. I'm just curious. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. We'll take Anthony's call first here on the Rob Snow Show. Good morning,
Hello.
Anthony. Hi, Anthony.
Hello.
Legalizing pot. Was that the right thing, wrong thing to do?
I think it was the right thing to do.
Okay.
And on that, I would like to wish a happy 420 and happy Pod Day to everyone in Ottawa.
Okay.
It's the best thing since sliced bread, if you ask me.
Oh, really?
And I think it's actually fairly socially acceptable. I've got rid of all my alcohol in my house, and now I have a pot bar for all my guests. So when they come, they can have their choice of whichever strain makes their day. And
wow.
I don't feel that there's any huff or fuss about it. I walk in my neighborhood, it smells like pot. I walk downtown, it smells like pot. And between you and me, it smells better than cigarette smoke or exhaust fumes from cars.
Okay.
And so I've got no problem with it.
No problem. If you used it before it was legalized, Anthony?
Absolutely. It's what gave me all my energy and my mojo.
Okay. All right. Okay. So you used to get it from a guy, I'm guessing, right? You had a guy, right?
Absolutely. Back in the day, there was,
back in the day,
you know, the way you had to go see your buddy on the corner of the street, or your pal waiting for you at the coffee shop, or
whatever, right?
You know,
you needed a guy.
wherever.
You needed a guy. Yeah. So you don't, is the guy at a business now and you go to a store? Is that what you do? Or do you grow your own, or?
Quite frankly, I don't know what happened to that guy, but I have been using the Ontario Cannabis Store. It works very well, and I also noticed that all the local shops carry a large variety of products, and it's like going into the LCBO or Toys R Us, I guess.
Right. Okay, Anthony, you've got us off to a good start this morning. Love the mojo. Love the mojo. Okay. 750-1310, talking pot on 420. Cameron, downtown. Good morning, Cameron.
Hey, Rob. How are you?
I'm good, Cameron. Thanks for calling. It's been more than 3 years since the Trudeau government legalized pot in Canada. Was that the right thing or the wrong thing to do?
So I'll try to answer all your questions. If you don't mind hitting me with those questions, and I'll try to keep streamlined there.
Right thing or wrong thing?
I think it was a great thing that they did it.
Okay.
I think that the messaging around the product has failed.
Okay.
I'll get to that in a second. I think what they've done great, they've really created nice brands, nice store lines, where there's an image in all the stores. Some of them have this mid-century modern feel to them. Some are very modern. It looks very, very nice in there. It looks nicer than a Starbucks.
Some of them look like the Apple Store, for crying out loud.
Oh, yeah. It's very West Coast. They really have a West Coast feel to most of these stores.
Yes.
The staff is friendlier than you would see at any fast food
On that
place
point,
or
this
whatever.
was another question. Are there too many stores in Ottawa?
It's ridiculous.
It's
Too
ridiculous.
much.
So too many.
Everywhere
Okay.
you go now. Okay, so to the caller before, I understand what he's saying, and I totally agree with him. But it needs to be mentioned that there's two types of smokers. There's the ones that could function in the day without it, and they keep it for the nighttime as a treat or something to relax.
Yep.
But the majority of people, it's a lifestyle. They cannot do anything unless they've had their little joint or their vape or whatever it is. And the problem with that is that now most places you go outside of these pod stores, and I've quit, by the way, since this became legal, I have actually quit 22 years of smoking because of it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So everywhere you go now, it seems like you're looking around and the lineups outside and the behavior of some of the people, it's like an episode from The Walking Dead now. Like,
Okay. Let me. Let's move along here. Is it socially acceptable now? Is it as socially acceptable as alcohol? Do you think it's reached that point?
Here's what I noticed on that note. I find that amongst the blue-collar consumers, it's completely socially acceptable. It is part of that lifestyle. I used to do construction. Let me tell you, everything you see that's built is built by someone that's stoned. But the social acceptedness, is starting more and more because you have a lot of white-collar consumers that are not shy of coming to the store anymore to get their pot, and they tend to vape more than they smoke the actual flower.
Okay. If If you used pot before it was legal, you had to get it from a guy. Now, you don't use it anymore, but
I remember.
Would you get it from a guy or a legal store? Let's say you decided to smoke pot again. Would you get it from a guy or a legal store?
I would go back to a store because the issue when pot was not legal is that it's like Murphy's Law. When you wanted it, the guy was out. When you had it, the guy was full of the brand new stuff. And you had to go to the park and meet him, and it was always sketchy and weird. So now, I mean, the store removes all of that annoyance.
Yeah, okay. All right, Cameron, great call. Great call. I want to take one more here before we stop. 750-1310. Nadia in Ottawa. Good morning, Nadia.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, hi there. It's been more than 3 years since the Trudeau government legalized pot in Canada. Was that the right thing or the wrong thing to do?
It was the right thing to do, but they went a little too far.
Okay.
And for me, the most important thing are the children.
Okay.
Because there's not one kid who's 12 or 14 that doesn't have a vape these days.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay.
And they conceal it. And they make it look like a cookie store where a kid is saying, I can't wait to be 18 to get in there. And so we know what weed does to the kids' brains.
Right. So you think
and no one
it's...
seems to care about that.
Even though it is illegal, in the Act, it says it's illegal to market it to children. You think they're somehow attempting to market it to children. Is that what you're saying?
The thing is, there's not one kid who's 15 who doesn't have a friend who's 18.
Right.
Right?
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And yeah,
Okay.
of course they have it. I mean,
right.
I have a child who's 16 and he smokes.
Right. Smokes
And-
marijuana.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
And I know, and you know what? I can't do anything because it's available.
Right.
And
Okay.
back to my dealer, I've been smoking since I was 12.
Smoking marijuana since you were 12?
Yes, sir. I'm 50.
And you're 50 now. Wow.
Yes,
Holy cow.
yes,
Okay. Okay.
You know, I do not go to the stores because they're not as good as the ones that we used to buy from. And no.
So you still have a source? Like you don't...
Absolutely. And they're doing better than ever.
Better than ever. Wow.
So the point of them stopping these dealers, it didn't work.
It didn't work. Okay.
Not at all.
All right. Okay. Are
And
there
again,
too
I just
many
want the
stores?
children to be safe. That's my most concern.
Okay. Are there too many stores?
Absolutely. They're like Tim Hortons. I'm sick of it.
Okay.
And they give them this beautiful names, the velvet purple, whatever. I mean, this is bad for the kids we have.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I have a lot of anger because I lost my son in 2020. He was 18. I'm sorry. Not
Okay.
meaning to
I'm
ruin
sorry to
anybody's
hear that.
day.
I'm sorry to
And
hear
so
that.
he overdosed. But I mean, if you smoke this young, you can easily lead to opioids. And this is another issue one day. I hope you talk about it.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of overdoses in Canada, and no one is looking at it.
Right. The opioid crisis.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
I'm honored to have spoken to you.
Well, thank you for your call. I hope you'll call back sometime when we talk about this issue again.
Thank you, sir.
Yep, 1017 Rob Snow Show. It's 4:20, and we are talking about the marijuana business in Ottawa on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
So the Women's Business Network is a volunteer-run association that achieves its strategy and vision by supporting women to achieve their success on their own terms by providing development opportunities, valuable connections within the organization itself, and it facilitates member access to growth within their business and careers.
I mentioned the 2-year absence of the Businesswoman of the Year awards. Obviously difficult, Mira, but certainly an opportunity to work on some new things. Tell us what you've got planned, what you worked on.
Yeah, we really missed putting on the BYAs for the last 2 years because of COVID. It also was unfortunate that we couldn't celebrate the women that were having such a huge impact on our community in Ottawa. So we're really glad that they're back now. As you know, that they've been around since 1983.
Mhm.
They are a purpose to celebrate the achievements, the professional expertise, and the leadership of all of the outstanding women we have in the National Capital Region. And for the first time this year in 2022, we've introduced 2 new categories, one being the Lifetime Achievement Award and the other one being the Community Champion Award.
Okay, yeah, and let's break it down even further because, as I mentioned, there's different categories and then, of course, different awards within categories. Tell us about some of the returning categories and some of the other awards as well.
So the 2 returning categories that we're bringing back are actually the entrepreneur and the enterprise leaders. Those are very popular in our community. They draw a significant amount of nominations, and they do get a lot of attention because it's very common that we take the opportunity that we want to celebrate the entrepreneurs in our community, especially after the 2 years of being through what they've been through, right? So we're looking for nominees of owners who have significant impact on their businesses, that have seen strong growth in the last little while. And one of the things that we did do to revamp this award was we dissected it into 3 subcategories based on the term that the individuals have been in business for. So you've got from startups that have been around for 1 to 3 years, then we've got the emerging entrepreneurs 3 to 7, and the established entrepreneurs for 7 years and above. So there's really going to be 3 awards or 3 winners within the entrepreneur category itself. And then we've got the Enterprise Leader Award that's also come back. And this is an opportunity for organizations to nominate individuals within their, their business that display exceptional leadership attributes, positively impact the environment.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Kind of going rapid poll style this morning on a 420. More than 3 years since the Trudeau government legalized marijuana in Canada. Was legalizing pot the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do? And then we'll go through another series of questions that we have for you. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Garth in Nepean. Good morning, Garth.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, nice to hear from you. Do you think legalizing pot was the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do?
It was definitely the right thing to do. It helped alleviate a number of the legal system issues with people being arrested for small possession, for growing small quantities. It also helped with business. It's now a tax revenue generator.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yep. Since legalization, according to a report, I have a bunch of stats from this report from Deloitte, the big consulting firm, did a big, deep dive into the Canadian cannabis industry. Since legalization, it's $15 billion in tax to various levels of government. It's a lot of money, $5 billion a year since legalization.
Mm-hmm. So, and that definitely can go to healthcare, to education, to other services.
Yeah.
But
let me ask you a few other questions here, if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
Are there too many pot stores in Ottawa?
No.
No. Okay.
It'll regulate itself. It's only been 3 years. Within another few more years, you'll see the number start to level out. Unfortunately, it's the government regulations that limit how these businesses operate to some extent. So if the government would ease off on some of the regulations and restrictions, I think we'd see the industry start to integrate.
Consolidate, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think smoking marijuana is as socially acceptable now as drinking alcohol?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
I moved out to British Columbia in 2000 to Vancouver's downtown east side, and the community there was really took a lot of the stigma away from smoking in public or being known as a smoker. Dana Larson, Mark Emery, the Prince of Pot, that culture there really helped to, Tommy Chong really helped to bring it out into the mainstream.
Okay. If you used pot before it was legal, you needed to get it from a guy. I would call him the guy, you know?
I was the guy.
You were the guy. Okay.
I was growing here, but on the Quebec side.
Right, okay.
But I ended up being interacting with the police, and of course, at that time, the stigma was, if you were into the marijuana, you were into bikers, or you were a criminal, or you were...
Well, were you?
Yeah.
Were you into the bikers?
No, I was a person who was growing for my own benefit and a couple of others. We had people, and this is something that was started back in British Columbia, was co-ops, where a group of us would get together and grow our own crops, and then at the end we would distribute and for our own benefit,
right.
Own use.
Okay. So do you think the guy is out of business? Sounds like you're out of business now. You're not in that business anymore.
I'm not. I grow for my own.
You grow your own
consumption.
now.
But yeah, now the big guy that you have to go to is like who? Bill Blair or those? The top cop that used to. Now he's big in the marijuana industry.
Well, it's not Bill Blair. He's in the federal government now. But I know who you're talking about there. Yeah. The former chief in Toronto. I can't remember his name.
Sorry, Mr. Blair. I smoked one, so I confused you.
What is that guy's name?
But yeah, now it's the guy that you're seeing is big business.
That's right. Yeah, there are a few of them who did that. Yeah. That's gonna bug me now. I'm gonna have to Google who you're talking about. I know who you're talking about. Used to be with the Conservatives too. I think in the federal government. And he was with the Toronto Police Force. He was a Veterans Affairs Minister. David will find his name. All right, I gotta go. Thank you, Garth. Very interesting. Okay, yeah. There's a guy who used to be the guy. I love that. Perry in Barrhaven. Perry, good morning. You're on City News.
Hey, good morning, Rob.
It's been more than 3 years since the Trudeau government legalized pot. Was that the right thing or the wrong thing to do?
Well, I happen to have in front of me the current copy of Canadian Business Magazine.
Right, okay.
The front page story, the cover story, says, and I'm quoting, "The cannabis crash. How did we get weed so wrong?"
Oh, really? Okay.
It says marijuana was set to be Canada's next multi-billion-dollar industry. 4 years post-legalization, stocks are down, production has stalled, and the illegal market is thriving. How did we get weed so wrong?
Okay.
So that's all I know about it, because frankly, I don't care.
You don't care? Okay.
No, I don't. It's just not part of my life.
So you didn't smoke it before and you don't smoke it now, and it has had no effect, right? Okay.
The only thing that bothered me about it is the way it was introduced as a campaign promise with no porta-thon. That's what bothered me.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Perry. Thank you. Right. Well, that's interesting. Okay. That they think we got it wrong. And then, a bunch of other questions there, right? Too many pot stores in Ottawa. There are more than 100 pot stores, according to recent news reports. Is marijuana, do you view it as socially acceptable now to smoke marijuana? Would you bring it to a dinner party like you would a bottle of wine? And if you got it from the guy before, is the guy kind of out of your life now and you go to a legal store? In some provinces, that means going to a government store. Here in Ontario, it means going to a privately owned store. In Douglas, Patty. Good morning, Patty.
Good morning.
Yeah, hi.
Today?
I'm good, Patty. Thank you.
Good. I'm long-time listener, first-time caller.
Well, I appreciate it. I hope things are well in Douglas today.
Things are going just great.
Okay.
So,
it's been more than 3 years since pot became legal. Was that the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do?
It was the right thing to do.
It was. Okay.
I think it was. I mean, let's face it. How many people were in jail for the possession of marijuana? I mean, I think it kind of
probably not too many. Probably not too many.
Well, a lot of people were getting arrested for drug charges, or at least that's out of the way. But I want to speak to what a previous caller had said, and that was about the children.
Okay.
I have two teenage boys, 15 and 13. My 13-year-old is in grade 8. On his Snapchat, on his phone, in the middle of the night, I have seen kids in his class smoking weed at 3 o'clock in the morning, vaping. My 15-year-old son in grade 10, I mean, he doesn't know a kid who doesn't vape. It's an epidemic in high schools. It's really bad. These kids are smoking and vaping in bathrooms all day, and they need it to function, and that's where the problem is.
Okay. It sounds especially with the vaping.
Yeah.
More so than like rolling joints or whatever. Right?
Absolutely. Wow, it's the way the new generation is doing it now.
Okay. You're worried about that.
I think it's a big problem. It's a major problem. I see it firsthand. I mean, I have marijuana tests in my cupboard just in case, if I ever suspect. Because let's face it, I mean, when we were teenagers, I'm in my 40s, and we were teenagers, everybody might smoke pot once or twice in high school. There was always that guy. But these kids are smoking and vaping every day, all the time, going to school stoned. And it's a large amount of kids.
Okay. Big problem by the sounds of things. All right. Patty, thank you for your call.
You're very welcome.
I appreciate it. Yep. Great to hear from you in Douglas, 1028. Halftime already. Wow, it's flying by. At 750-1310 on a 420, we're talking pot on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Being a crossing guard works great as part of my schedule as a high school student because I still have time to do my tests and assignments while earning a little bit of cash on the side.
Working as a crossing guard fits into my current lifestyle because it gives me a lot of time during the day to pursue hobbies that I'm very interested in.
A friend of mine introduced me to this job. I didn't know it was actually a paid job.
I always start my day. It's a very little, I guess, few months baby, and she always comes with her dad on a pram, and the smile she has, like, oh my God.
Well, I think the OSC is a very good employer. They show quite clearly that they care about you. They're very polite.
They really make you feel like you're part of a family.
It's fun. I really enjoy it.
Gets us out of the house, too.
Yeah.
#1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, April 20th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 2 degrees, and here's what's making news this hour. Provincial mask-wearing legislation on public transit is set to expire 1 week from today. OC Transpo has heard that could be extended, but even if it does come to an end, the rule on board all OC Transpo vehicles will remain in place. The general manager of OC Transpo says mask wearing will remain in place for the foreseeable future. Ottawa police asking anyone who has information about a shooting on Jean Mance Street to come forward. That was yesterday morning around 6 o'clock. Officers were sent to that area of Vanier after a report someone had been shot. The victim is in stable condition. You are asked to check your security and dash cam video if you were in that area. The cost of living in our region went up well above the national rate last month. In Ottawa, the rate for March compared to last March, 7.5%. Nationally, the rate was 6.7. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
It's another 420, and it's now been more than 3 years since the Trudeau government launched legalized marijuana in Canada. Was that the right thing to do for Canada or the wrong thing to do? And then I have a bunch of other questions that I'd like to get into with you. Justin in Ottawa, you're on City News. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. On the marijuana question, I have no issue with the legalization of it.
Okay.
I think a previous caller suggesting a business article, which I have not read, saying we got it wrong, but I think private sector tends to correct itself. If you think about the tech bubble of the 90s, that burst, but now we're back deep into tech. Shopify, the gem of Ottawa, although I know it's on a downward swing. So I think stuff like that will correct itself. And Europe has got it right too in decriminalizing actually harder drugs. They've seen prison systems in a healthier state once that has occurred. So I think it's trending in the right direction. What I'd actually like to see is the normalization of open carry alcohol. It's more of a provincial question than a federal question, but just for example, if you go to any provincial park, you cannot walk around with an open can or case of alcohol, yet you can vape and smoke marijuana until your heart's delight, and no one will stop you. So I think if we're going to start legalizing legalizing and normalizing one substance, we should explore others as well.
Okay, yeah, interesting points. Do you think there are too many pot stores in Ottawa, or is that something you think, well, market forces will work that out?
I think market forces will work that out, but at the same time, you can't buy craft beer other than LCBO and select grocery stores. Why not have craft beer stores pop up? And I think that comes to my original point.
Yeah, I'm all in favor of that too, yeah.
If we're going to normalize and allow one sector, one substance to be privatized, why not go all in?
Go all in.
If we've generated $5 billion of revenue over the past 3 years on marijuana legalization, just think what that might do for craft alcohol, craft beer, craft distilleries, etc.
Okay, great points, Justin. Thank you. Thank you for calling. Yeah, you too. Yeah. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. For the first time on this topic, we have some lines available. 420. Was legalizing pot in Canada the right thing or the wrong thing to do? We're doing a kind of rapid poll style. Nobody's really called and said, it was terrible. Demon weed, terrible. Just tell me how you feel on this, because it's, we're kind of talking pot, marijuana, cannabis, prohibition versus legalization, and what was the best decision for the country. Talking pot, buying pot, selling pot, growing pot, smoking pot. If it's about pot, I want to talk about it. 420 used to be a big day in Ottawa. If you think back, 4 or 5 years ago even, this day would usually be one of the largest crowds that you would see in the run of a year on Parliament Hill. It really would, if not the largest crowd that you would see on Parliament Hill. You kind of had like 420 and March of Life? Maybe the two biggest protests in any given year in Ottawa. It would be kind of like this national pot smoking ceremony on Parliament Hill. And pot has been legal for a few years now. Everybody has kind of become accustomed to this, I guess you could say. We've all lived with it for a few years now. And there were many wonderful things that were predicted. A windfall of revenue for the government, an end to the illegal market for marijuana, ending the need to know a guy who knows a guy and, going to meet the guy, and maybe the guy has some stuff, maybe he doesn't and he robs you, whatever. The goal of legalizing marijuana was to put an end to needing to ever know a guy. And there were lots of bad things that were predicted. And, we've heard it from a few mothers who have called already in this hour. That we'd be raising a generation of stoners. And there would be stoned drivers wreaking havoc on the roads. And there would be an increase in mental health problems for young people. Accidental overdoses, mentioned already by one of the callers. More trips to the emergency rooms. Also, pardons were promised for people who have criminal records for pot possession, and that was supposed to be available to, the estimate was 10,000 Canadians would be able to take advantage of that. And, many years later, only a few hundred pot pardons have actually been granted. So how much of the good and how much of the bad has actually come true? And another question, that I've been asking, and I would like to know your answer, is, are there just too many pot stores in Ottawa? My goodness, what do you think? My goodness. There's, if you want it, there's certainly no shortage of places to get it. You can't swing a cat in this city without hitting a pot store these days. All privately run, all privately run, approved by the government, and I mean, they're everywhere. And it seems wherever there is a vacant storefront, it doesn't seem long before it's a pot store that moves in there. That's great if you're a commercial landlord and you have a vacancy. You have a tenant now. And some of them look very, very nice. As I said to one of the callers, like Apple stores. Others, I don't know, David, kind of shady. Some of them look kind of shady, But they, to get the conversation started, 750-1310. Legalizing pot. Was that the right thing to do? Wrong thing to do? It happened October 17th, 2018. But before that, this was kind of the National Pot Smoking Day, 4/20. George in Ottawa.
Yes.
Hi, George.
I was totally against it. I think it's idiotic for any prime minister to legalize drugs, no matter what it is. And as you have seen, it took us 50 years, more or less, to get rid of cigarette smokes in restaurants and everywhere else, a health hazard, you know.
Yep.
They talk about the profit they have made, $13 billion. Trudeau spends that in 1 month. It's ridiculous. The health issue that comes from all this, smoking marijuana and all that, I mean, it's just devastating young people today. You heard it from the lady there, that in high schools they're using it. No wonder our education system, is becoming a mockery. It's young people today that come out there. We are in 17th place when it comes to education in the Western world. So why? It's because so many young people are on drugs today. It's just unbelievable. I walked into the drugstore the other day, and there was a couple of characters in there, and somebody, I don't know, had smoked that stuff, and I said to my wife, it smelled like skunk in here. And good Lord, one of these guys turned around. He must have been smoking marijuana. I didn't know it stinks so awful. It's just horrendous.
Okay.
I don't know how anybody can legalize something like that, and why anybody would want to smoke that stuff. It's just disgusting. Like I said, it's a health hazard. It costs the health system a lot more money in our health care than the profit that we're making. It's the same with the cigarettes. That used to be everybody was smoking, and look how many people finally stopped. I had six or seven friends were smokers, and not one of them is still around. And I'm 83 years old, and I still have a perfect eyesight and everything else. It makes a big difference whether you want to stay healthy or if you want to take dope. It's just a very simple way of putting it.
Gotcha, George.
Yeah.
A very old school way of looking at things, George.
Yeah.
Right?
Work hard and you live well.
All right, George. Thank you. Nice to hear from you, George. Yeah, it's been a while since I've heard from you. Nice to hear from you. Yep. There's a long time listener there. Doesn't call very often anymore, but nice to hear from him. Michael in Orleans. Michael.
Hey guys.
Hi,
Happy
Michael.
420.
Yes, sir, Michael. Was it the right thing or the wrong thing to do to legalize marijuana?
Well, I think very layered. I'll make it very quick. The right thing to do, because at the end of the day, it's a lot better to take a small gummy instead of having a half bottle of scotch. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
If you need to come down. George, I believe it was George who just called. I do worry about the accessibility for the young folk. And I'm not that old. I remember high school, just as you remember high school. We're of the same age. But it seems to be a lot more prevalent now. And I'm worried about mental health issues for them. As for us, the adults, whatever could get us away from liquor and alcohol, I believe is a positive thing. That is the biggest problem I see for people of our age. So I'm kind of split. Of course the government was going to screw it up because it's the government.
Right.
But I think it is good that it's legal. I think you have to decriminalize possession. I would much rather have a gummy at the end of the night than scotch. I worry about the kids. I hope that clarifies my position.
Yep, good position, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Loud and clear. All right. Jane in Ottawa, you're on City News. Good morning, Jane.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. Legalizing marijuana more than 3 years ago now. Right thing or wrong thing to do?
I think it was the right thing.
Okay.
So I was a teenager, 15, 20 years ago when it was illegal. And I grew up on the West Coast where there was a little bit more of a liberal mindset towards it. And it was a dangerous thing. But at the end of the day, the responsibility came down to, parents. And I think the education system in part with regards to, controlling children and educating them. And so the mothers that are saying that the legalization is responsible for a whole new generation, I don't necessarily agree with that because there have been kids trying to find pot for a very long time.
Right. Okay.
Right? And so the legalization, is the same as alcohol. There's kids who have waited outside of liquor stores for decades, with cash in hand trying to find an adult willing to buy them a bottle.
Right.
So
Okay.
there's always been that kind of issue, but the legalization, I think, on the most part, it makes it safer for everybody because, what's going into it.
You know where it's coming from.
Grown,
It's,
exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Right?
All right.
And it's
yeah.
a personal choice at the end of the day, right? And I also think it is also about respect. So I don't agree with people who go into, public places and are blowing smoke in other people's faces. I think that's just disrespectful.
Yeah, I don't know how often that's happening anyway. But let me ask you a few more questions here. Are there too many pot stores in Ottawa?
I think there are.
Yeah, me too. Okay.
I think there are too many.
It's crazy.
I don't think that there's a need to have 4 or 5 within a 3-block stretch on Bank Street.
Yeah.
It seems a little unnecessary.
I mean, in some cases, like they're right across the street from each other.
Well, and that's it. And I get that it's a competitive market. But another problem that I find is that with the Ontario cannabis store, the amount of waste that sector is producing with the packaging, I think that something should be done about that.
Oh, okay. All right.
I think something really should be, because the way that they're packaging the products, there is just endless amounts of waste. There's these massive plastic containers, half of them you can't recycle. They're coming in, boxes that are 6 times the size of what you're ordering, stuffed with, paper and plastic and styrofoam, and it's completely
environmental nightmare. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
all right.
Exactly.
All right.
I don't support that part, but I think that legalizing it was the right thing to do.
All right, Jane, thank you. Very informative. Yeah, thank you. Let's take another one here. It's in Nepean. Nepean is a wonderful place to be in.
Hi, Rob.
Vince. Hi, Vince.
Yes. Hi, Rob.
Do you think legalizing marijuana was the right thing to do, Vince?
It's one of the few things that this government has done that's right.
Okay.
That and looking after seniors and social programs and the CERB and all that. I think all that was good.
Okay.
But I have an issue with this the marijuana, the pot legalization. I don't have a problem with that. The problem I have is they're not supposed to be within certain distance from schools.
Right, yeah.
Now, I'm right here outside Maryville High School right now, talking to you.
Yeah.
And across the street from Maryville High School, there's your pot store, there's your Harvey's, there's your Pizza, and there's your Subway.
Yeah.
So I think it's too close to the school, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I don't think there's supposed to be a pot store there.
There is. It's called Dutch Love.
Really? Okay.
It's right across from the school. Right across the street from the school.
Yeah.
So whatever happened to that bylaw?
Well, that's a very good
Anybody
question.
enforcing that, or is the taxes more, more enticing than?
I'd have to look it up. I thought it was supposed to be something like 100 meters or 150 meters or something like that.
The parking lot of the school is 20 meters from the school, but the actual store is about 100 meters. But that's, I mean, it's called a little bit of a crack in the law or whatever.
Yeah. Sure. So, I mean, if you go to Maryville High School, you got a few bucks in your pocket at lunchtime, you have a hop across the street, and there you go. Exactly. I don't know. Let's assume everybody's of age who's going in there, I guess, right? So.
Yes, right, of course. The ones that are underage outside, the ones of age go in.
I suppose. Okay, Vince. Thank you. Thank you, Vince. Bye-bye. Yep. Okay.
Right.
Some lines available there for the second time this morning. 750-1310. 750-1310. Just kind of taking an assessment, if you will, of the marijuana landscape right now, more than 3 years after legalization, and on another 420 on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Was this inspired by your own kids and the difficulties that you had getting them to brush?
Yes, absolutely. So my 3-year-old at the time, we went to the dentist and she was complaining that her teeth were hurting, and we found out she had 10 cavities. For those that don't know, 10 cavities out of 20 teeth, that was half of her teeth. I was panicking. I didn't know what to do. We had to change her diet a little bit, and that was easy. The hard part was getting her to continue brushing her teeth. So she underwent 2 surgeries to get all of her 10 cavities fixed, and then she had to get 8 metal caps, and then she went back for an emergency procedure to pull one of the metal tooths. I guess the nerve was exposed. So the poor thing went through so much, and I had to think of something. So she brought a plushie, and it helped comfort her. And I was like, okay, I need something that's going to help long term. Like, how can I get her to continue brushing her teeth? So I said, this plushie is going to report back to the Tooth Fairy back at Tooth Fairy Land. And then that's when I created the thought of, okay, we need Toothy. So Toothy is actually there to comfort the children when they go to the dentist. They're also there to put in the bathroom so that Toothy watches them brushing their teeth and is approved by dental hygienists. I have raving fans from dental offices, and also the Tooth Fairy absolutely loves this, and I'll show you why. On the back, there's a pocket.
Okay.
So that the children can put their lost tooth that they lost in here, and the Tooth Fairy will come. Yeah, the Tooth Fairy will come and take it and put the money. But Toothy gets to stay with the child.
Of course. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
my ultimate goal is obviously the book, because it educates children on proper dental hygiene. However, Toothy is a game changer for shaping our children into adults who are not fearful of the dentist.
Yeah.
I was able to present to a school in New York, all over Ottawa, obviously. A lot of our local family and friends have pre-ordered the book. In the States and Georgia, all over. I will be presenting in Singapore next week, and daycares. So anyone who pre-orders, you can personally nominate a school of your choice, or a daycare, or a facility. I actually presented at a college for dental students. So yes, it's geared towards children 0 to 8 years old. However, senior homes I've presented in, they get a kick out of it. It's a cute rhyming book.
Where can people go to your Kickstarter and, of course, get a copy of the book and their own Toothy?
Yes, so Kickstarter is actually going to be almost closed, so I don't want people to feel rushed. They can go to my website at My Friend Toothy. So again, My Friend Toothy, and they could pre-order there.
Time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
So David has been doing some super sleuthing over there. What are you, like a surveyor now?
That's right. With my Google Maps.
How far away is the pot store from the high school on Maryville Road?
It's 400 meters.
You saying the pot store is 400 meters away from the school?
That's right.
And that makes it compliant.
Completely compliant.
With the local bylaw.
Perfectly legal.
Which is 150 meters. So I was right on that. Okay. All right. Very interesting. 3 years since the government legalized pot in Canada. Was that the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do? What is your opinion? Joe in Ottawa. Good morning, Joe. I hear no Joe. Joe, call me back. Jerry in Brockville. Jerry, good morning. You're on City News.
Good morning, Rob. This
Hi,
is the
Jerry.
first time I've called in. I'm a little nervous.
That's
so,
okay. That's
forgive
okay.
me.
Was it the right thing or the wrong thing to do to legalize marijuana?
I'm in a yes and a no position.
Yes and a.
I was involved with policing, corrections, and courts. And I'm also a mother of 4 kids, and 3 out of 4 of my kids do smoke marijuana, vape, a few other things I'm not impressed with. Both their father and I were all in law enforcement. Not a dang thing we could do to stop these kids. We were so on it. You wouldn't believe it.
Right.
But there are far too many pot stores. There just is.
Okay. What is it like in Brockville with pot stores?
Oh, it's pretty heavy in Brockville. And like they say at the schools, like you say, it's very true. You catch the kids outside all over the place, smoking pot. Vaping is a real big one. I'm also a grandmother of 20 kids.
Wow.
And, I'm a little older, but those kids are all doing it too. I don't know. I have maybe 1 or 2 grandkids. The rest are too young. That everybody who can smoke pot is smoking pot. And I think it's a sickness. And I've got a daughter, and I think they're so far gone. They're not little kids anymore. They're from 39 to 45, excuse me.
Right.
And 3 out of 4 are heavy pot smokers.
Okay.
It breaks my heart. It really does.
It really does. Okay. But, Mr. Trudeau, used to say when we legalize pot, we will keep it the marijuana out of the hands of young children and the profits out of the hands of the criminals. Those were the 2 things that he used to repeat wherever he went, or whoever would listen. But when it comes to young people, you don't think it's
No.
It hasn't really done that.
I think he's all wrong. I don't know where his head is.
Yeah,
but,
all right.
He's not here with us right now, that's for sure.
Okay. Jerry, thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting call. Interesting call. 3 mothers very concerned about vaping in particular in the school environment for students. Joe, Ottawa. Joe.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Joe. Yeah, good to hear from you, Joe. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, cell phones. 3 years of legalization. Was that the right thing to do? Wrong thing to do? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it was the right thing to do. It took it took a lot of people getting busted and not out of the criminal justice system, so it freed up a lot of resources.
Okay.
But I have to chuckle about one of the callers talking about Maryvale High School and the weed shop 400 meters away. I used to go to Maryvale High School in like the 70s, and I finished around 81.
Okay.
Anyway, there was a ton of weed in Maryvale High School. We didn't need a pot shop. Up the road, there was J.S. Woodsworth, which was locally named J.S. Weedsworth. There was weed all over the place. So what about the kids? Well, the kids were getting high back then. But yes, right. I'll have to agree with the gummies, the candies, the flavored vapes, etc. It makes it a lot, more palatable for people. And plus, if you're vaping, it doesn't smell. So when you would smoke weed when it was illegal, you'd have to watch where you smoke because it would smell like a long ways away. But yeah, just keep it out of the kids. I mean, if you can't take care of your kids, then maybe you should stay home more, and so that they're not at home getting high all the time, right?
All right,
or even
Joe.
at school.
Okay. All right, Joe. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Is that what they called J.S. Woodsworth when you were in high school?
I went to Bell High School, so I wouldn't
Did you hear what he said? They called J.S. Woodsworth J.S. Weedsworth?
Oh, yeah. I've heard that.
Okay. I've never heard that before. In Kempville, this will be the last call. Pat in Kempville. Good morning, Pat.
Good day. How are you?
I'm good. Legalizing marijuana, was that the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do?
Probably the right thing to do.
Okay.
The courts were all tied up with small, petty shit that we're paying for. But the lady that just called in there, they were both in law enforcement. Both parents were in law enforcement.
Yeah.
She said her kids were in their 30s and 40s.
Kids were, yeah.
Yeah, well, legalizing the marijuana 3 years ago didn't start those kids where they are.
Right, but she's worried about her grandchildren as well, she said, right?
Well,
she has 20 grandchildren. So.
Even before there was legalized pot stores, they were going to get it anyway.
Okay.
And same as the booze.
But I think what the concern is that it's proliferated, that it's become, society's become too permissive. I mean, we spent decades trying to get people to quit smoking, ick, uck, yucky, gross, don't smoke, it's bad for you, and that this is like normalized smoking behavior again.
Yeah, if anything they should be worried about, it's the vaping, because that's just another way for the cigarette companies to make money because the kids aren't smoking as much as they used to.
Right.
And that's all chemical, and it's got to be worse than even cigarettes.
Well, and that's become the chosen delivery device for young people.
And all the kids are doing it.
Yeah, and all the kids.
I see young kids there, 12, 13-year-olds got a vape in their hand.
Crazy. Okay.
That's
all right.
Great. Yeah, you're right.
But generally speaking, you're in favor of the legalization of marijuana.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Great conversation this morning. We'll speak to some experts on this, public health experts, somebody in the industry, as we make our way through the final hour of the Rob Snow Show here on City News.
The Calgary Stampede is a world-renowned festival celebrating wrangling, bull riding, and everything cowboy. But did you know that many people credit its origins to a Black Canadian? Take a minute to meet John Ware. The word cowboy has racist roots. Before the American Civil War, white ranchers were called cowhands, but the enslaved black men and women working alongside them were actually referred to as cowboys to infantilize and disrespect black ranchers. The legend of cowboy John Ware is full of impressive feats and awe-inspiring skill, including the ability to train even the wildest broncos and easily hold a horse on its back. But the real story of John Ware is one that starts from more humble beginnings. Ware was born into slavery in the United States, gaining his freedom towards the end of the American Civil War in 1865. Ware's skills with cattle ranching developed as he traveled throughout the United States, eventually settling in a town southwest of present-day Calgary, Alberta, which made him one of the first Black pioneers in the prairies. Over time, news of Ware and his amazing cowboy skills began to spread, and people came from across North America to witness his horsemanship and skills as a rancher. Eventually, Ware went on to own many of his own ranches. In 1892, he became the first man in Western Canada to earn the title of steer wrestler, and Ware's feats in local contests set the stage for the Calgary Stampede Rodeo we know today. In September of 1905, Ware was killed in a freak accident with his horse, and more than 10,000 mourners from across the region attended his funeral, making it one of the largest in Alberta history. Though his true story is difficult to separate from the legends around him, Ware's status as a respected forefather of cowboy skill continues to be celebrated today. Ware has dedicated monuments across Alberta, including several sites near his first ranch, a Calgary school in his namesake, and a building at the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology.
Is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News. Now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, April 20th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 2 degrees. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. General Manager at OC Transpo has updated the Transit Commission on mask wearing. Although it could be extended, the provincial rule is scheduled to end on April 27th. That's next Wednesday. Renee Emilcar says riders and drivers, though, will have to continue taking that public health precaution.
Should the provincial mandate end, we will continue to use the transit bylaw to maintain the current masking requirement on our system for the foreseeable future.
Now, Amilcar says they have not received official word from the province on an extension on the mask mandate past next Wednesday, but they have heard that is coming. As Transit Commission discusses long-term financial planning for OC Transpo, the chair is once again calling for more information on the return-to-work plan from the federal government. Here's City News reporter Chris Curries.
Hybrid work is here to stay for the feds, but what does that mean for OC Transpo? For example, buses from the burbs to the core would be reconfigured. But how many and how often is something that Alan Hubley doesn't know yet. And to know that, he's calling once again for more details from the federal government.
I just need clear direction from the minister that what's the numbers going to look like, because we don't want to take 50% of our buses off of those routes and then have crowded buses and people saying you cut too far. We really need the numbers so that we can make those decisions.
Hubley tells City News most of the riders are civil servants and students who are also leaning on a work-from-home model. Chris Curries, City News.
City News time, 11:02, and now your forecast with weather specialist Denise Andriachi.
It will be a sunny afternoon for Smiths Falls, partly cloudy in Ottawa. This evening, we're pretty clear overnight, partly cloudy, but we've got some rain on the way for Thursday, about 5 millimeters. We may see a few wet flurries as well, highs near 11. Sunny and near 12 for Friday, which is pretty seasonal for this time of year. So heading into the weekend with some good news and some nice weather. The daytime high today for Smiths Falls, 10 degrees.
And right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 2 degrees. Ottawa police asking anyone who has information about a shooting on Jean Mance Street to come forward. It was yesterday morning about 6. Officers were sent to that area of Vanier after reports someone had been shot. Police and paramedics showed up. The person treated by paramedics for non-life-threatening injuries and taken to hospital, where he is now listed in stable condition. But anyone who witnessed the shooting or who has dash cam or security camera footage is asked to contact Ottawa Police, the Guns and Gangs Unit. Russian forces pressuring a stubborn pocket of resistance in Mariupol, Ukraine. Renewed hopes for an evacuation of thousands of civilians from that shattered port city. We get more from reporter James Longman.
A new plea from inside the besieged city of Mariupol. The commander of Ukrainian forces there releasing a video saying they have only days or even hours left and telling the Washington Post, "We will not lay down our weapons." Ukrainian forces are dug in at the Azovstal steel plant, but the city council says over 1,000 civilians are also taking refuge.
Now, that area has been the scene of some of the most dramatic suffering of this conflict so far. City News Time, 11:03. Provincial Liberals have released their election platform combating racism and improving community safety. Leader Stephen Del Duca says a Liberal government in Ontario would reverse cuts to anti-racism programs brought in by the Conservatives. He also says more money would be earmarked to hire police officers from diverse and underrepresented communities. Del Duca says there would be regular police training in things like de-escalation, anti-racism, cultural sensitivity, and mental health. He would also call on all police forces in Ontario to submit their stats on the diversity of officers in their departments. There would also be a new cabinet post with a minister dedicated to fighting racism. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Hi-ho, the best man in Ottawa was Mapara Joe. Mapara Joe. Big Joe Mapara paddled into Mattawa all the way from Ottawa in just one day. Hey, on the river Ottawa, the best man we ever saw was Big Joe Mapara, the old folks say. Come and listen and I'll tell you what the old folks say. Daddy say Big Joe had an old pet frog, bigger than a horse, and he barked like a dog. And the only thing quicker than a train upon a track was Big Joe riding on the bullfrog's back. Heave-hi-ho, the best man in Ottawa was Mapara Joe. Mapara Joe. Daddy say Big Joe used to get real wet from cutting down timber and working up a sweat. And everyone will tell you around Carlton Place, the Mississippi dripped off of Big Joe's face. Heave-hi-ho, the best man in Ottawa was Mapara Joe. Mapara Joe.
Time for Valley View. Bruce McIntyre's on the road today with the Eganville Leader. Good morning, Bruce.
Good morning, Rob. And I'm sitting here chilly, cold, white knuckles, but I'm okay. It's the Valley.
All right. And the signal is not too bad, which is good. The cell signal's not too bad. Where are you right now?
Downtown Mink Lake.
Downtown Mink Lake. I don't know where that is. I really don't know where that is.
Same as all the stuff. It's between Douglas and Eganville near Kelly's Corners.
Okay.
It is across the way from the Whitetail Golf Course. It's a beautiful little lake. And I'm out here to interview a woman who is joined the community radio station out here in Renfrew during the daytime, and just an interesting story of how she got here. So
okay, so you're working the beat right now. You're working. I love it. You know, we just did a whole hour on it's Pot Day. It's 420 today.
It is.
And Pikwakanagan, which is part of, in fact, there's a story about Pikwakanagan on the front page of the Eganville Leader this week. That's like marijuana central, I think, in your area, in the Ottawa Valley, right? All right, hold on. Put him on hold. This is always the issue with Bruce sometimes when he's actually out working on a story and he calls in with us. All right. Yeah. Okay. Let's try again. Yeah. Go ahead, Bruce. Yeah. On Pikwakanagan. Yep.
Yeah. They have a population just over 400, and they have 11 dispensaries.
11.
And 11. Yeah. They're
for a population of 400. Yeah.
Well, that's not including all the people that drive from Ottawa, Kingston, Renfrew, Pembroke.
Yeah.
Busy spot. And actually, I'll be heading up there today to get my gas.
Oh, really?
I believe it's 157. I think. So.
Well, that's a lot better than in the city today. It's $1.84 in Ottawa today.
Oh, my goodness. Well, $2 a liter is coming up.
And what did you say it is in Pikwakanagan? 157?
I think it's 158, I think.
157. Oh, geez. Holy cow. That's pretty good. Yeah. I'd be bringing every jerry can I could find at that price, the way things are going. But, it's interesting, that Pikwakanagan has gone that way. Algonquin community, which sometimes has been at odds on issues of land development, for example, with the other big reserve, which is on the Quebec side, which is Kitigan-Zibi.
Yes.
And up near Maniwaki, Kitigan-Zibi has no pot stores.
It might be a Quebec thing. I don't know. It might be a Quebec thing. I know.
I know in Kitigan-Zibi, they haven't made up their mind on how they want to do it yet.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Whether they want should an individual be allowed to own their own pot store, or do they? What my understanding is, they want it to be community benefit. You know what I mean? So,
in Pikwakanon, they do community benefit. They bring a lot of people in there.
Right.
To get gas, to do other things, and when they first opened, there's one shop that opened back in 2018, and then it just kind of multiplied, and I'm telling you, Rob, it's a busy little spot up there, no matter what time of day you go.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Bruce McIntyre is with us with the Eganville Leader. He's with us every week. The Eganville Leader is out today. It's a weekly, and it is Renfrew County's largest paid circulation newspaper. Been around since, if you can believe it, 1902. 120 years. 120 years. And an Orange Air ambulance has been on the cover every year since Orange Air ambulance has been around. Gerald Tracy is the publisher of the paper, and there's something about having an Orange Air ambulance on the front page. Puts that on there.
Fluke accident, Steve Florence lives on near Cormac, outside of Eganville, and he was struck by a Manitoba tree. How Canadian is
That's
that?
right.
Manitoba tree.
Yeah.
And he was very seriously, and they met the helicopter and there.
Yeah, you got to put him on hold. This is an incredible front page news story, actually, by Gerald Tracy. If you can imagine, it's a story about a man from Eganville out working in his yard. It's a very windy day. He notices some recycling bins are getting tossed around, goes and picks them up, and this tree falls over, big maple tree, and one of the branches impaled his head. So, quote, he was beat up everywhere, but they let us bring him home that night. Suffered a concussion. That's really quite a recovery story, given, after you've been impaled by a maple tree. So, yeah, Bruce is back with us. Yeah, good. Yeah.
Not the way I want to spend that.
That's unbelievable. Yeah. Big story. So, speaking of Pikwakanagan, we were just speaking of Pikwakanagan. The chief of the Pikwakanagan First Nation is Wendy Jocko.
Yes.
And we've talked about her before. Very interesting person. What is going to be her role with the Ottawa City Council?
Well, it's not going to be her role, per se. The council, when the next council comes in next year, they will decide on who and how to appoint. They're looking for an elder. He's probably a gentleman or a woman, one of the mothers or one of the elders. And they'll have a ceremonial role at the council table when issues come up for land, as you mentioned before, land development, anything to do with the First Nations treaties going on right now. One thing they will not have, however, is a vote. But they'll be there for their knowledge, their inclusion. And this process started more than 10 years ago when Chief Kirby Whiteduck was head of council. And it's coming to fruition now. Mayor Watson and the entire council, one of the very few times, Rob, they voted unanimously. So the elder will be appointed next year, and be there as a voice to the valley and to the land issues for natives in Canada. So it'll be very. It's a long overdue, and I think it's a good move by the mayor and Chief Jocko.
Okay. Finally, just give us an update on what's going on in the riding for the provincial election, Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke. Yakabuski is running again. I had John Yakabuski, the longtime PC MPP, on the program a couple of weeks ago and confirmed he's running again. Who's running against him, Bruce?
Well, the first ceremonial lamb coming out, I shouldn't say that. That's terrible. But John he had the highest percentage victory last election, so he's very popular here. Engineering student Cade McWilliams, 19.
19 years old. Running for the Liberals? Running for the Liberals?
The Ontario Party.
Oh, the Ontario Party. Okay.
Eric Sloan came over. He's one of the they picked out of the Tory caucus. and it is definitely taking a right turn on the right side of the dial as far as politics go. They're more the social conservatism wing, and they want to get back to more fiscal conservatism and more social conservatism. So he is first out of the gate. The Liberals and the NDP have yet to announce, and it's terrible to say, but I think they would do, Rob. They go through their roster, their current members, and they go, "Do you want to do this? Do you want to do this?" I'd be serious, because John is just he's like above all party lines. It doesn't matter what party you are. You may disagree with him, but you can't help but like him. So he'll be taking back in October and see what happens. I'm not too concerned about Mr. Yakubowski.
Right. Be doing a victory song for Yakubowski.
He will.
Maybe not a victory dance. He's more of a singer than a dancer, John Yakubowski.
Yes, he is. He does a two-step, too. I've seen him two-step. Not the prettiest, but he does it.
All right. I think we'll wrap it up there this week.
All right, Rob.
All right, Bruce. All the best. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I know. Cell phone coverage in the Valley is... it's just part of the digital divide.
Hey,
Bruce.
hey, Rob.
Yeah,
we're off AOL, so.
Talk soon. Enjoy, what is it, Mink Lake?
Mink Lake.
Mink Lake. Sounds lovely. All right, Bruce.
All right.
Talk soon. Bye. Bruce McIntyre with the Eganville Leader, 11:14. We will be right back on the Rob Snow Show, City News.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So, still ahead, Professor Mike von Massow is going to join us on the day the inflation rate was released by Statistics Canada, and certainly contributing to the overall inflation rate is the higher price for food. I mean, butter up 16% year over year, the price of butter. Professor Von Masso has been on the program before, Associate Professor, Department Food, Agriculture, and Resource Economics at Guelph University. So we'll talk about the rising cost of food. But today is 420, and as I've mentioned in the past, that used to be a big day of protest in Ottawa. David was just looking at the Parliament Hill webcam. Not a soul to be found.
Tumbleweeds.
That's the only weed that's blowing by Parliament Hill today is the tumbleweeds. No, it's a changed landscape. It's been more than 3 years since the legalization of marijuana in Canada. And Andy Palalos joins us now, Chief Revenue Officer for cannabis retailer High Tide Incorporated. Good morning.
Mr. Rob Snow.
Yes.
Funny meeting you again like this.
Yeah, it's nice to hear from you. How's business?
Happy 420.
How's business?
Business is good, sir. Business is good. Thanks for having me on.
A pleasure. How would you say in the 3 years since cannabis was legalized, how would you describe the retailing industry right now of cannabis in Canada?
Yeah, retail is awesome and fascinating and challenging. Certainly, this is a brand new industry, and as of now, I believe there's about 1,300 cannabis retail stores in Ontario alone. So it's grown very quickly over the last 3 years. Similar levels of saturation in retail stores across the country and other provinces. We're in Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan. It's a similar situation there. But in general, consumption of cannabis and the interest of the cannabis consumer in Canada continues to grow. And in the last 3 years, we've seen the industry contribute an estimated $43 billion to Canada's national GDP. It's 151,000 jobs across the country. $3 billion in tax revenues for Ontario right now. So it's in general growing and something to be proud of.
Nevertheless, I do wonder, just by looking at the number of retail establishments, whether the market is saturated.
Sure.
Do you think there's going to be some consolidation?
Oh, no
what
question.
Do you think? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we're seeing it already.
Okay.
At the end of the day, the consumer decides. We're very fortunate. We've seen tremendous growth, specifically in the Ottawa area. With our Canna Cabana retail stores, we have 4 now in the region, 2 in the Byward Market, 1 in St. Laurent, our Elmville Acres store, which was previously Bud Room. In that vein, we are seeing a ton of consolidation happening across the province as, folks who got into the cannabis retail world are starting to decide and determine if they want to stay in it. Right. There's certainly a lot of challenges in the space. It moves very quickly. And again, like I said previously, the cannabis consumer is deciding which retail concepts they're excited about and which to support. And that's not attractive for everybody who opened up a cannabis retail store in the last 3 years.
Okay. What do consumers want in a cannabis retailer?
That's a great question. Over the last few years, we've really come to understand the answer to that question pretty intimately, which is the best quality cannabis at the best price. There's not a lot of gimmicks that could make up for those two things.
Okay.
In the last year, we've really honed in on doing whatever we need to do, getting as creative as we need to get to provide the lowest price on cannabis and accessories in the province. We have an enormous selection of craft cannabis, bongs, pipes, vaporizers, grinders, anything you need to smoke. And frankly, that has laddered up into tremendous growth. Our business continues to grow month over month. And it's because customers appreciate that specific angle, which is best weed at the best price.
Best weed at the best price.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's uncomplicated.
Yeah.
But ultimately, and again, we over the last 3 years.
And is it mostly just the flowered product, edibles, beverages, these other products? How is that side of the business right now?
It's a good question. All of the newer formats, like, for example, edibles and beverages, and I say newer, not necessarily because they're new to cannabis, but, certainly new to consumers. they're still growing. Edibles make up about 5% of our business. But folks who buy edibles, they love edibles. You know, Rob, they tend to buy 4 or more at a time, and usually it's just edibles that they're buying. So there's a customer who's really interested in that product. You know, there's lots of flavors. There's chocolates. There's gummies. Our favorite is the Sours line. Tastes exactly to me like Sour Patch candies. I'm a big fan. And beverages, you know, they're still finding their feet a little bit. I think this summer is going to be a big one for beverages as folks, as the pandemic eases a little bit, start, you know, gathering and hopefully enjoying, you know, more outdoor time together. And, you know, there's lots of new products on the beverage side. Canned beverages recently came up to Canada. It's the number 1 cannabis beverage in the United States. Flavors like lemon, lavender, and grapefruit, rosemary. These things make it really easy for folks who are interested in trying cannabis to slide into it. You know, I actually had one with my mother the other day, and she was a big fan. So yeah, those 2 categories are making some of you know, the folks who want to try cannabis, making it a little easier for them.
And fingers crossed with the economy reopening, seemingly life returning to normal. How is that affecting the business that you're in, cannabis retailing?
Yeah, I mean, you know, as things, again, fingers crossed, go back to normal, and we continue to operate, you know, within the, let's call it, safe parameters of what you can do within these days of the pandemic, we're seeing more and more people come to our stores. Like I said, month-over-month growth and traffic numbers have been really surging at Canna Cabana retail stores. Today, we're at almost 500,000 members in our Cabana Club loyalty program. It's free to join. It gives our members access to the best prices in the province, and we're adding like 10,000 new people a week right now. So lots of new faces in our stores, lots of folks who are interested in getting involved and trying out cannabis. And for us, you know, it's been really refreshing to see that happen here in 2022.
Okay. Thanks for joining me. Great to hear from you again.
Thanks so much. Yep. Happy 420, Rob.
Yep. That's Andy Palalos, Chief Revenue Officer with High Tide, as you mentioned, that company, 4 locations here in the Ottawa area. Now, UK politics right now. It's been a difficult time for UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. He was fined, basically found guilty of a criminal offense by the police. Okay, but paid a fine and apologized yesterday in the UK House of Commons for boozy parties at 10 Downing Street while the UK was under lockdown during the pandemic because of laws that were passed by his government. Now, every Wednesday morning in the UK Parliament, they have what's called Prime Minister's Questions. Well, guess what the questions were about today?
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join the Prime Minister in wishing Her Majesty a happy birthday? Why did the Prime Minister's press secretary, Allegra Stratton, have to resign from her job?
Minister.
Sorry. I bitterly regret Allegra's resignation. I think it was very sad, and I think she did an outstanding job. I do, particularly since she was the one who coined the expression coal, cars, cash and trees, which enabled the UK to deliver a fantastic COP26 summit last year.
Allegra Strachan laughed at breaking the rules. She resigned. The Prime Minister then claimed he was furious at her behaviour and accepted her resignation. Professor Neil Ferguson broke the rules. He also resigned. The Prime Minister said that was the right thing to do. The former Health Secretary broke the rules. He too resigned. The Prime Minister tried to claim he sacked him. Why does the Prime Minister think everybody else's actions have consequences except his own?
I thank the right honourable gentleman. I feel he's in some kind of Doctor Who time warp. We had this conversation yesterday, Mr. Speaker, and I've explained why I bitterly regret receiving an FPN. I apologise to the House, but he asks about the actions for which I take responsibility, and I'll tell him we're going to get on with delivering for the British people, making sure that we power our out of the problems that COVID has left us. More people in work than there were before the pandemic, Mr. Speaker, fixing our energy problems and leading the world in standing up to the aggression of Vladimir Putin. Those are all subjects about which I think he could reasonably ask questions now.
These are strange answers from a man who yesterday claimed to be making a humble apology.
That's what it sounded like. Prime Minister's questions in the UK. House of Commons, what an actual functioning House of Commons looks and sounds like. 11:28, far from over for UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Tomorrow, MPs will vote on whether to refer him for a formal parliamentary investigation into whether or not the Prime Minister misled Parliament about his knowledge of breaking the law over his own COVID restrictions. 11:29. The news coming up next on City News.
One for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, April 20th. Good morning. I'm Danielle Bain. Right now in Ottawa, it's 3 degrees, some cloudy skies, and in Smiths Falls, it's 4. Here's what's making news this hour. The province's mask-wearing legislation on public transit is set to expire next Wednesday. OC Transpo has heard that may be extended, but according to the general manager, Renee Amilcar, if it does end, the rule on board all OC Transpo vehicles will remain in place for the foreseeable future. Ottawa police are asking anyone who has any information about a shooting on Jean Mance Street to come forward. Yesterday morning around 6 a.m., officers were sent to that area of Vanier after reports someone had been shot. The victim was treated by paramedics for non-life-threatening injuries and taken to hospital. He is now in stable condition. Anyone who witnessed the shooting or has dash cam or security footage is asked to contact Ottawa Police Guns and Gangs Unit. Ontario is reporting 1,662 people in hospital with COVID-19 today, up nearly 12% from the previous day. The province is also reporting 203 COVID-19 patients in intensive care, a slight decrease from 206 on Tuesday. The province also recording 28 new deaths as a result of having the virus. And Russian and Belarusian tennis players have been banned from competing at this year's Wimbledon tournament because of the war in Ukraine. The move makes the grass court Grand Slam tournament tournament in London, the first top-level tennis event to ban players from Russia and Belarus. Among those affected are second-ranked Daniil Medvedev. He won last year's U.S. Open and was this year's Australian Open runner-up. City News Time, 11:33. I'm Danielle Bain. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
Legalizing marijuana was a years-long process for the Trudeau government. It's been almost a decade, if you can believe it, almost a decade. This goes back to 2013 when now Prime Minister Trudeau was leading the third party then, the Liberal Party, and he was saying things like this.
I see my friend waving a sign about decriminalizing cannabis. I'll take that as a question. I'm actually not in favor of decriminalizing cannabis. I'm in favor of legalizing it, tax and regulate. It's one of the only ways to keep it out of the hands of our kids, because the current war on drugs, the current model is not working. We have to use evidence and science to make sure that we're moving forward on that.
Some think it was a key to the Liberal majority victory in 2015. It was a change election, and for many years, maybe up until the childcare agreements, you could argue, if you're thinking about Justin Trudeau's legacy, maybe that was it, legalizing marijuana. But since it's become legal, Statistics Canada's been keeping track of all sorts of data points on the consumption of cannabis in this country. And I don't want to overwhelm you with stats, but I can tell you can get overwhelmed looking at the stats about cannabis consumption from Statistics Canada. For example, British Columbia has a reputation of kind of being the epicenter, the pot epicenter for Canada. But if you look at provincial data as compiled by Statistics Canada, the percentage of the provincial population that actually smokes pot on a regular basis, that greatest provincial population percentage, the gold medal province is Nova Scotia. Blue Noticers, I guess, smoke the most pot. And it's British Columbia comes in second. 27% of the population in Nova Scotia, 27% admits to smoking pot at least once in the last 3 months. 27% of the population. And then it's BC at 24%, and then Ontario at 23%. And the lowest is in Quebec at just 10%, where pot doesn't really seem to be a thing. It's all government controlled in Quebec. No private pot stores in Quebec where you could buy beer at a gas station. 4.4 million Canadians smoked pot at least once in the last 12 months. That's 15% of the population over the age of 15. It's very much a younger demographic. It skews young. It's 31% of Canadians aged 15 to 24, 32% of Canadians aged 25 to 34, 28% of Canadians 35 to 44, and then it drops off significantly after that the older people get, and it's more of a male thing. More Canadian males than females smoke marijuana, but not by much, 21% versus 18%. And for regular users of cannabis, StatsCan says they spend an average of $69 a month on pot and pot-related paraphernalia, and men spend more money than women. And the number one preferred product is dried leaf product, which accounts for 66% of all revenue in the Canadian pot industry. So just a few statistics to throw your way on this 420, more than 3 years after legalization. As we welcome now Dr. Daniel Myron, family physician, public health and preventive medicine specialist, postdoctoral fellow at the Ottawa Hospital and the University of Ottawa, to talk about some of the health-related issues around smoking marijuana. Good morning, doctor.
Thanks for having me on the show, Rob. Rob.
Yeah, it's very nice to hear from you. So there were a lot of worries about what legalizing marijuana would mean. Would it normalize smoking again? Would we have a generation of young people that would think smoking anything was normal again. Would it be too permissive? Would it be too prevalent? Would it cause a mental health deterioration in young people? What has been your experience now, 3 years plus in the health field, 3 years plus after the legalization of marijuana, Doctor? What are you seeing out there?
I think the key thing to think about is that we know a lot less than we think we do or we should.
Okay.
And there's a couple of reasons that that's happened. When cannabis was legalized in Canada, the legal industry got off to a very, very slow start. And people here in Ontario are probably familiar with, we didn't have a single store in the province for the first 6 months. And it seems like a long time ago, but for a long time, there was just no legal industry. And that's not the case anymore. You have thousands of stores in Ontario, and they've really expanded. But what's happened is a lot of the data that we have about the health impacts of legalization from Statistics Canada, from research, comes from a time when there really wasn't a legal market. It was in its baby or infancy stages. And as a result, when you say what happened after legalization, we really only know what happened immediately after legalization before the industry took off.
So there's a data deficit right now. You need more data, right?
There's an enormous data deficit. It's not that we don't know anything. There are certainly some signs that are coming in, and I find some of them troubling, and I'll give you an example. So, when we talk about cannabis use, the group who really are going to encounter a lot of health harms or social harms are people who use cannabis daily. And the data from Statistics Canada shows that the number of Canadians who report using cannabis almost every day has increased by 46% since legalization. So now just under 8% in late 2020 of Canadians said that they used cannabis every day. We also know that hospitalizations and emergency room visits related to cannabis have gone up across the country, and there's some indication that that's occurred as these legal markets, as you get more stores and more sales. But that actually leads us to another big problem in that, in the midst of this unprecedented drug policy experiment, you also have an unprecedented pandemic. So it's very hard to know when you see changes like that, if that's related to legalization and an expanding market, or if that's related to pandemic disruptions, or the two of them.
Right. Okay. And could marijuana use be on the rise, the number of people using marijuana daily on the rise because of the stress, the anxiety, maybe the boredom of being locked down, these sorts of things that are all related to the pandemic? And maybe when the pandemic is over, maybe some of that eases. The truth is, I think you're saying we don't know right now, right?
I think that's the big thing. We really don't know. And again, I think that there are some signals that this is at least partially due to legalization in the maturing market. I don't think that you can chalk this all up to COVID-19. And we'll know more as the pandemic, recedes and we get back to life as normal or a new normal. But it presents a big challenge of what's happening. But there are studies that even pre-pandemic or, shouldn't be susceptible to pandemic changes that do caution against some health impacts. So, for example, I led a study in Ontario finding that cannabis poisonings in very young children have increased ninefold since legalization. And it seems that much of that increase occurred when the government began allowing the sale of commercially produced cannabis products. So that's cannabis containing gummies and desserts and concentrates and things like that. And
the kids getting into them thinking they're candies and ingesting.
Exactly. So the kids seem to be ingesting. These are like 3-year-olds, and they're ingesting cannabis, and they're showing up in Emerge, and 40% of them actually need to be hospitalized and then come into the hospital. And so there are some very clear signals of some harms that have absolutely gone up since legalization and are almost certainly due to legalization. And then I think there's a lot of places of concern where the data is muddy, and we're not sure what the cause is. But you know, the overall message is that pandemic or legalization, harmful patterns of cannabis use have increased quite substantially since legalization.
Okay. How worried are you that we could be backsliding on decades of anti-smoking messaging?
Yeah, I think that was a big concern at the start of legalization, that you've had, you know, we've done, you know, one of the great public health achievements of the last century has been the progress on you know, denormalizing tobacco, educating people about the health impact, and you know, rates of smoking in Canada and amongst many high-income countries are way down, and you know, there isn't as much research that's been done on cannabis smoke, but it is certainly there's lots of reason to believe that it will be very harmful for lungs when used long term, and I think that that is a concern, that you can have increasing use and increasing lung disease that comes from it. But I think that you know, cannabis causes a multitude of different harms when it's consumed, and that, you know, in many ways it's the mental health impacts that can occur, or you know, cannabis impaired driving. These are all other things that you really need to keep an eye on.
Okay. So given this data deficit, what more would you like to know as a researcher right now?
I think where the big research is going to come in the next little while is that we're going to see data post-pandemic, which will be very interesting to understand if these concerning trends continue or if they drop back down. And I think that we're going to start seeing really meaningful comparisons across different provinces. You know, you were highlighting it. So, for example, Quebec has taken probably one of the strictest, if not the strictest, approach to legalization in the country. So they, you know, they don't allow a lot of these new commercial products. They have low numbers of stores. They have a higher age limit, so the legal age of purchase is 21 there. So I think you compare a place like Quebec and you compare them to Ontario or Alberta, who have a really strong private market. And, you know, if you find that Quebec has seen a smaller increase in cannabis use or cannabis harms compared to these other places, it really hints at a legalization and what in the research community we call a commercialization effect. What are the health impacts of allowing a psychoactive substance like cannabis to be sold for profit from, you know, individuals who ultimately are looking out for a bottom line? They, you know, their duty to stakeholders is to sell as much cannabis as possible.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you so much, Doctor. Great to hear from you this morning and share your insight.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
Yeah, that's Dr. Daniel Myron from the Ottawa Hospital and the University of Ottawa, preventive medicine specialist and postdoctoral fellow. We'll be right back with a food professor, associate professor, Department of Food, Agriculture, Resource Economics at Guelph University, University of Guelph. Mike Von Nassau is going to join us to talk about food inflation as part of the Consumer Price Index this morning. What can you pull out of that inflation report from Statistics Canada other than, oh my gosh, it hurts to go to the grocery store these days? We'll be right back on City News.
It really is a tremendous source of excitement and joy for the theater staff and I to welcome artists finally back to the theaters. It was a tremendous pleasure to sit on the selection committee. We really have something to cater to all musical tastes, from trippy art pop to straight ahead rock and roll to soul and funk. But it's huge for us to be able to welcome local artists back into the theaters to showcase their amazing talents for people here.
Up to the top is where I'm headed and I'm going.
You know what? I've checked out some of the stuff already before doing this. I've been hyped and ready to do this because it's definitely being done on a major level. And, you know, I'm here seeing it in person right now and I'm like, wow, you know, this is what it is, man. I'm happy to be here.
This kind of concert series promotes music and gives us newcomers or even like new bands a big chance to showcase their talents and share their music with the world.
It's amazing that OMIC has organized this and given an opportunity for artists to perform, but also be part of something that I wouldn't be able to create this just on my own. So everybody's talent comes together to create something great.
It says a lot about the city that they are engaging the processes that get those musicians out and get them in front of people, and the music is getting heard. So we don't have a thing where like everybody's the best kept secret, right? We're sort of breaking through that wall a lot, and which is exactly what we need.
Well, first of all, I'm really grateful for this opportunity. For me, it's a little bit like being officially part of the local artist community in Ottawa. And it's like my first real big show where I'm gonna be performing my own songs, so it's really exciting.
What the hell's going on? Why you still holding on?
You know, it's a great opportunity for us artists to be able to really get a reach to an audience and a good quality audience too. I'm just happy that I can be involved. I'm happy that I can add value. It's top tier for sure.
It really is like a dream come true, especially having so many restrictions in the last couple of years, not being able to jam because we couldn't get together, and then to be able to do it in a beautiful venue like this with the seats in the background and just the whole entourage of it, and really feeling like we're able to put on a real show for the first time in a long time. It's just fantastic. It really is great.
Pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
So let me remind you what Statistics Canada said about inflation. Worse since January of 1991, when Home Alone was the #1 movie at the box office. January of 1991, 6.7% on an annual basis, and food was a major component. Overall, food prices up 8.7% in March compared to March of last year, an increase of 8.7%. And StatsCan, in its report this time around, really broke down the dairy side of things, as well as eggs. And those, it's interesting because those are two areas of agriculture that are supply managed. We have supply management in those two segments in dairy and eggs. Dairy products and eggs both 8.5% higher. And break it down a little bit more like this. Butter up 16%. Cheese up more than 10%. Fresh milk up 7.7%. And then food purchase from restaurants up 5.4%. And breakfast cereal and other cereal products, like Quaker Oats or whatever. It says everything except baby food up 12%. So it's tough out there. It's tough out there in the grocery store or in the restaurant. And let's welcome back Associate Professor in the Department of Food, Agriculture, and Resource Economics at University of Guelph, Professor Mike Von Massow. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning. How are you today?
Well, I'm poorer. How are you?
Yeah, I am the same. I'm still doing pretty well today, but I haven't been in a grocery store yet. So
Yes. What's going on with these rising food prices, Professor? Go ahead, sir.
Well, yeah. I think we're kind of seeing a perfect storm. There isn't just one thing that is causing a rise in food prices. We're seeing a variety of things. Supply chain disruptions that arose from COVID. We are seeing extreme weather events and drought in Western Canada and the Western U.S. that has affected yields and the ability to carry livestock. We're seeing a war in the Ukraine, which is affecting wheat prices. So it's like a perfect storm of impacts that are all sort of adding up to give us this highest rate of inflation in 30 years. It's also interesting to look at the numbers relative to what's happened in the last month versus what's happened over the past year. So some of those numbers that you talked about, were up year over year, but if anything, were less up in the last month. So some of those price increases we've already seen and sort of incorporated into our planning, and some of them are more acute now. So if you look at bakery products, so you said we're up almost 10%, 2.5 of that was in the last month. That's partly because of the war in Ukraine and the impact on wheat and other commodity prices. We saw the same thing with pasta. So those are some of the more immediate impacts. If you look at beef over the last year, it's up 14%, but actually down a couple of percent from the last month. So it's important to sort of say what's happening now, and that's not to say beef isn't more expensive. It is. I've seen some huge prices in the grocery store, but some of that pressure is coming off, and we will continue to see that as we get into the Canadian growing season. We'll see some of these fresh fruits and vegetables and other things come down. You talked about dairy products, and we heard an announcement of increases to dairy farmers that came into effect earlier this year. So some of these price increases that we are seeing for dairy products are not a surprise. As you said, some of them are pretty big and are happening right now that we'll see, and that's as a result of those price increases to what farmers are being paid.
Okay. On the eggs side of things, on the poultry side of things, there's a lot of news stories about avian flu, culls of flocks, what have you. What do you expect that to do to chicken market, egg market, that kind of stuff?
Well, I think we're starting to see an increase in the avian influenza. I'm not sure we're seeing price impacts of those outbreaks and those culls yet. It has the potential to get worse, and because we are supply managed in those sectors, it also means we have, if we have a drought in Western Canada, or if the beef plant shuts down, we get some relief from the pressure because we can import beef. With eggs and poultry, if we end up with significant culls, which fortunately we haven't seen yet, and hopefully we're nipping this in the bud, we could see dramatic increases in the price of both chicken and eggs. My sense is the increases we're seeing now have more to do with the increasing cost of production that we've seen over the last year than they do with avian influenza. But the potential is there that if this gets worse, that those prices will really begin to skyrocket.
Okay. Do you think, some economists think overall the inflation rate this is probably the peak and things should start to moderate throughout the rest of the year on the food side of things? What do you think?
I think it's not unreasonable to expect that we'll start to see some relief. And again, that means we won't see continued price increases or price increases of the magnitude that we've seen over the last year. And that's why it's always important not only to look at the year-over-year results, but at the month-to-month result to say, how much of this have we already seen? We hear a number like 8% and we go, oh my God, that's horrible. But and it is horrible, but we've already seen a lot of that, and that's not new price increases. So I think we will probably continue to have the opportunity as we get into the domestic production, which we always have a seasonal decrease in price for the next 6 months. As we get into Canadian production that's not shipped as far, we should see some easing of some of the supply chain constraints. The Ukraine remains a wild card, how long that goes on and how long there is a disruption in both its production and its exports. Will have a factor. How much worse avian influenza will have a factor. So there's some optimism that the pressure won't be as high, but there are some still unknowns that could come into play.
Thank you, Professor, for your time this morning.
Thanks. Well, have a great day.
You too. Professor Von Massow, Mike Von Massow, from the University of Guelph. Sam LaPrade up next on City News.
This program is brought to you by